Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Rhodes gave a soft sigh. Maybe it worked. Maybe this really was a step forward. He figured there was no need to say anything else today. Man. Rhodes replied, matching his tone. Don't tell anyone. Rhodes smiled gently. All right. I won't tell. After getting off the carriage, Rhodes and Elfman dropped off the Laban fur at a local tailor shop for processing. When the shopkeeper heard they were wizards from Fairy Tale, he immediately offered a discount, proudly stating that Fairy Tale members often brought them business. Especially that guy named Gray. The boss added. And the one who breathes fire. Natsu. And that red-haired lady, Ursa. She orders custom gear from time to time. I only found this place thanks to Natsu's recommendation. Rhodes said with a chuckle. He said you could make fire-resistant clothing. Oh yes, that's one of our specialties. The tailor beamed. Want to commission one? What's the price? Rhodes asked. The boss gestured with both hands, indicating a hefty sum. Never mind. Rhodes said, already turning to leave. I don't need anything that fancy right now. By the time they returned to the guild, Elfman had adjusted his mood and walked in alongside Rhodes. The moment they stepped through the doors, someone rushed past them in a hurry, clutching a task request sheet. The guild was quieter than usual. Only a handful of members who had no plans to participate in the S-class trials were around, making the hall feel unusually spacious. Even the request board looked sparse. Just a few task slips fluttered there. And yet, Nab stood before it like a scholar studying sacred texts, reading each one with the utmost seriousness. Whenever he grew tired, he ordered a drink and returned to study more. Oh ho! Look who it is. Rhodes and Elfman. Mikhail waved from the corner. You two heading off to challenge the S-class exam too? Rhodes shook his head. Nah, just wrapped up a standard mission. Trying to earn a little spending money. Not that they actually earned anything from it in the end. What? I figured you'd be breaking the guild record for fastest to reach S-class after joining, Wakaba said with a grin, puffing his cigar. Is that a real record? Rhodes raised an eyebrow, wondering if the 2 old-timers were just bored from the lack of conversation over the past few days. But before he could say anything more, they were met with the most familiar and comforting sight. Welcome back, Elfman. Welcome back, Rhodes. Myra said with a warm smile that never failed to brighten the room. I'm back, sis. Elfman said. We're back. Rhodes added with a nod. Chapter 155, could it be some kind of plan? Rhodes handed the task report and the IOU to Myra. Mission complete, but I didn't take any payment. Myra looked surprised. What happened? Rhodes explained the client's family situation in detail. If that's your judgment, then there's no problem. Myra said with a gentle smile. Keep the IOU, just in case. Rhodes waved his hand. Better you keep it, or store it with the guild. I'm afraid I'll lose it if I take it home. All right. Myra nodded. Since the job's confirmed done, can you tell me the mission details? Elfman spoke up. Sis, I'm gonna go home and rest first. All right. I picked up some apples and persimmons yesterday. They're in the living room. Got it. Myra watched her brother leave, then turned back to Rhodes. You look pretty tired too. Want to rest a bit? I'm fine. Rhodes hesitated. But Elfman had his own reason. I thought I was taking him out to relax, but he came back looking more drained. I feel like I owe his big sister an explanation. Was he hurt? Myra asked, her tone instantly full of concern. No. Rhodes said, shaking his head. Good. Myra's soft smile returned. Whatever happened, you can tell me. Just then, Natsu burst into the guild like a whirlwind. Hey Myra. Mission complete. He slapped a job sheet onto the counter. Happy fluttered in with another one. This is the next one. Okay, Myra registered the request with practiced ease. Rhodes blinked. You two aren't gonna take a break? No time for that. Natsu grinned, finally noticing Rhodes. Huh? Rhodes. I won't lose to you in commission count. I'm not even trying to compete with you. Let's go, Happy. With the paperwork done, Natsu dashed right back out the door. Aye, sir. Rhodes chuckled. Well, at least someone's got energy to spare. Then his smile faded slightly. He's not going to destroy anything again, is he? Myra tapped her chin thoughtfully. Probably not. Even Natsu gets careful during exam season. So, he's only reckless on purpose? Just then, Master McGriv strolled down the stairs from the second floor. Ah, Rhodes. You're back. How'd it go? Not bad. Rhodes replied. There were a few hiccups, but in the end, the client was happy. Good work. McGriv nodded, clearly pleased. You're always dependable. Oh, and one more thing. Rhodes added. I brought back a few local herbs. Can you pass them along to Poorly Uzuka? Recently, Rhodes had given up trying to pay Poorly Uzuka in cash for her help. He had a strong hunch she'd just smack him upside the head if he tried again. Bringing her rare herbs or seeds he picked up on missions was a much better strategy. Like that time he brought back a pouch of flower seeds from the Kate shelter. This way, he didn't have to deal with her rejections, could support her interests, and help build the guild's stockpile of healing supplies all at once. The plan worked perfectly. Myra finished the paperwork at hand and grabbed her coat. Rhodes, can you come with me for a bit? Huh? Sure. What about the stuff here? Myra turned to McGriv. Master, we're heading out for a while. I'll leave things to you. All right. McGriv hopped up onto the front counter and sat cross-legged, chin resting in his palm. Somehow, he had a feeling he shouldn't have come downstairs today. With fewer people in the guild lately, the moment Myra and Rhodes stepped out together, it was hard not to attract attention. Wakaba gave an exaggerated sigh of envy. Myra, how about going on a date with me sometime, just once? Myra raised a playful hand. Isn't your wife super sweet to you? And no, wait. Wakaba's face turned pale as he realized what was coming. Please don't transform. Myra stopped just short, smiling mischievously. She wasn't actually planning to shift forms this time. Rhodes, watching their exchange, quietly made a note to find time to ask Wakaba for some one-on-one combat advice. The experience of seasoned mages like him was worth its weight in gold. Maybe Wakaba could help him fine-tune his usual tactic of summon monsters to pin the enemy, then strike from behind. Outside, the magnolia air was growing noticeably colder. Winter was clearly on its way. The coats they'd ordered from the tailor were still being made and would probably be ready in another week. Just in time to start wearing them. Myra had layered a short jacket over her usual dress as they headed out. Rhodes couldn't quite understand that kind of outfit. Did she have some kind of magic that kept her legs warm? Then again, from their experience on Galando's snow mountain, it did seem that having enough magic power made you more resistant to the cold. The streets were as lively as ever. Despite the chill, merchant stalls lined both sides of the road. In fact, there seemed to be even more vendors than usual, all hawking seasonal fruits, vegetables, and warm treats. Clothing stores had their winter collections front and center. Some magic shops had even rolled out a fresh line of enchanted items. Everything from heating charms to kettles that boiled water with a tap. Unsurprisingly, the most popular products were the ones featured in this week's Sorcerer Weekly. Rhodes remembered. It was Wednesday. The new issue would have just dropped. And now that he thought about it, it had been a while since Myra had done a photo shoot for the magazine. Though he felt a hint of disappointment, Rhodes was secretly a little pleased. Are we going shopping? He asked. Honestly, he hadn't even asked what Myra was doing today before agreeing to come along. Yeah. Myra nodded. One of the lights in the guild broke, and the heater from last year isn't working very well anymore. I want to try a new type this year. And then she listed off a bunch of items one by one. Most of them sounded like tiny details. But she remembered every single one. That focused look in her eyes made her seem especially capable. As the assistant guildmaster who oversaw almost all of Fairy Tale's logistical needs, she was practically the guild's head caretaker. For a place as rowdy and chaotic as theirs to run so smoothly, a lot of it was clearly thanks to her. Rhodes found himself wondering, who had handled these things before her? Was it Master McGriv? There's always a lot to prepare before winter. Myra said. Of course. Myra came to a stop and pointed ahead. Let's start here. Rhodes followed her gaze. Wait. Wasn't this a coffee shop? Didn't I say I'd treat you to coffee sometime? Myra smiled. Unless you want to save it for next time? This time's good. Rhodes didn't want to seem awkward. Since they were here, he might as well enjoy it. The two of them found a cozy seat and ordered their favorite drinks and snacks. They chatted for a bit about recent guild gossip. Eventually, Rhodes brought up Elfman. He had promised not to mention the whole crying incident. But did Myra count as an outsider? After mulling it over, Rode decided to leave that part out. Better to spare Elfman some embarrassment. So that's what happened, Myra said, taking it all in. After thinking it over, she smiled. I think it's a good thing. Thank you. Rode gave a sheepish grin. I was worried about how to explain it to you. This is a really important step for him, Myra said sincerely. Both Elfman and I owe you. She had a sneaking suspicion that Rode had planned this all along to help her brother. But Rode shook his head. It really was just a coincidence this time. Myra then asked. By the way, you mentioned trying to earn a living. Since you didn't get paid this time, what's next? Rode leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. I'll try picking up some local commissions within Magnolia. I think it's good to experience those kinds of jobs from time to time. Chapter 156, S-Class exam participants announced after the two finished their coffee, they headed off to buy the items Myra had listed. It was just an ordinary shopping trip. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, and they didn't run into anyone particularly noteworthy. Rhodes found that rather comforting. Myra glanced at him, noticing the faint smile on his face. Why do you look so pleased? I was just thinking how nice it'll be to have a proper heater once winter hits. Myra narrowed her eyes. That's definitely not it. Rhodes chuckled. Then take a guess. She paused, then shrugged. Nope. Not playing along. But her subtle smirk told him she probably already figured it out. Rhodes kept grinning. Myra resisted the urge to kick him in the shin. When the two of them returned to the guild, arms full of packages and chatting as they walked, Macau watched them with a wistful expression. They looked like a newlywed couple stocking up on essentials for their home. He couldn't help but be reminded of his own younger days, when he and his now ex-wife had gone through that same cozy phase. A little pang hit his heart. Too bad it hadn't worked out. Wakaba, puffing out a cloud of smoke from across the table, looked at Macau suspiciously. Why do you suddenly look like that? It's creepy. Who are you calling creepy, you old smoker? Macau snapped, slamming a hand on the table before slumping down again. Wakaba cracked his knuckles, ready to brawl, only to wince and nearly throw out his back. Oi, what's wrong with you? Macau sighed dramatically. Been divorced for years, man. Suddenly got the urge to find a girlfriend again. Wakaba raised a brow. Romeo's 5 now. Don't go making rash decisions. Macau gave him a flat look. What's Romeo's age got to do with me finding a girlfriend? I'm not trying to find one for him. Wait. Are you jealous because it's easier for me to date as a single man? Jealous? Of you? A walking wine bottle who reeks of booze? What did you say? You human chimney. Bang. 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 From behind the counter, Rhodes and Myra leaned and watched the exchange unfold like an old familiar play. Even when most of the guild's away, things never get quiet around here. Rhodes muttered. Peaceful days passed quickly, and before anyone realized it, November was already coming to a close. Since returning from the last mission, Rhodes had been unusually busy. Aside from his regular shifts helping out in the tavern, he'd started taking on various odd jobs during his free time. Small commissions like finding lost items, delivering goods, chasing off stray dogs, or dealing with rat infestations. These kinds of tasks didn't pay well and weren't exactly glamorous, so a lot of them had piled up over time. Most wizards wouldn't bother with them. Rhodes used to feel the same way. Back then, he'd rather spend his time training in a guild than chasing after rodents. But now that he was strapped for cash, every bit counted. He treated the work like a part-time job. To his surprise, there were actually benefits to doing this. Since many of the jobs had him zipping around Magnolia streets, Rhodes now had a solid grasp of the city's layout. If a battle ever broke out downtown, he'd know exactly how to maneuver around. Even better, word had spread among the townsfolk that Fairy Tale now had a reliable wizard who could take care of pests without demolishing buildings. A rare gem indeed. Best of all, Myra's opinion of him seemed to rise just a little after seeing how quickly and earnestly he handled the guild's backlog of minor tasks. The economic crisis has been resolved, Rhodes declared dramatically, collapsing onto the counter. His cheek squished against the wood, but his expression was one of pure relief. Thanks for your hard work. Myra tucked away the final task list and poured him a glass of water. Rhodes sat up and exhaled with satisfaction. It wasn't so bad. I'll be getting paid in a few days. Feels like things are finally turning around. Just then, Lockie chimed in with perfect comedic timing. You know rent's due soon, right? Rhodes shot her a look. You couldn't wait 5 minutes to say something like that? And by the way, he added with a smug grin, my rent's only 60,000 J. That's half of what you pay. Lockie looked horrified. What? How'd you manage to get such a good deal? Oh? So Lockie thinks her landlord's charging too much? Rhodes teased, eyes gleaming. I'll be sure to let Chico know. Chico, of course, was the daughter of the landlord who managed the girls' dormitory. I didn't say that. Lockie exclaimed in horror. And tattling is low, Rhodes. Super low. Sister Myra. She whined. Aren't you going to scold him for this? Myra, ever calm, just smiled sweetly. Well, he did exaggerate a little. He's only saving 40,000 J, not quite half. That's not the point. Lockie suddenly remembered something important. Those two were in the same team. After an evening filled with laughter and banter, Rhodes still made time to train alongside the Strauss siblings. Has Elfman gotten stronger lately? Rhodes asked, rubbing his forearm. He could feel the difference. Elfman's punches were hitting harder. Both in his regular state and especially after activating his takeover magic. Even when Rhodes blocked them, the strikes left a sting behind. He wasn't sure if it was just raw power or if Elfman was holding a grudge over something. Elfman cracked his knuckles and answered confidently. That's because I'm a man. As expected, asking Elfman was a dead end, so Rhodes turned to Myra for an actual answer. His magic has definitely grown stronger. Myra said thoughtfully. But Rhodes, you've improved too, haven't you? Maybe just a little. Rhodes replied with a modest shrug. Just a little. On December 8, X783, a light snow began to fall over Magnolia. That morning, Rhodes and Elfman headed to the tailor shop to pick up their custom-made winter coats. As soon as Rhodes and Myra walked into the guild wearing coats of matching color and style, Elfman finally realized something. Wait a second. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? What do you mean? Rhodes replied innocently. I'm just a poor guy who couldn't afford a decent winter coat, so I had to hunt monsters and bring the materials to a tailor. Yeah, right. Elfman squinted at him suspiciously. That particular tailor shop was known for quality and high prices. Even with monster pelts, the labor alone cost as much as a store-bought coat. Don't be like that, Elfman. Myra smiled warmly. I really like the coat you gave me. How about I make you one too, in a few days? No need, sis. I already have plenty of clothes. Still, Elfman suspected she only went shopping with Rhodes to get something nice for him. Now he wanted to go hunt another Laban himself and bring it back. Myra tried on the coat briefly and then folded it neatly away. With a new heater installed in the guild, the place was already cozy and warm. Rhodes took his coat off too and sat beside her, chatting about possibly adding the fairy tale emblem to the back. Maybe a smaller version on the chest would look cool too. The guild hall was starting to feel lively again. Members who had been busy or away for missions had finally returned, and today it was bustling with as many people as the annual Harvest Festival. Among the crowd, relaxed faces like Rhodes, Myra, and Elfman were in the minority. Most of the guild members were visibly anxious, pacing nervously or stamping their feet in anticipation. Because today was the announcement day. The list of participants for the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial was about to be revealed. Bang! A burst of sound echoed like a handheld firework going off, and a large banner bearing the fairy tale emblem unfurled from the second-floor attic. Colorful streamers rained down through the air, fluttering above the crowd. All eyes turned to the balcony, where Master McGriv stood tall. Behind him stood three of Fairy Tale's most formidable S-Class mages, Mirza Scarlet, composed and serious, Miss Togan, shrouded in his signature mask, and Lexus Dreyer, with his usual cocky smirk. A wave of murmurs rolled through the guild. It wasn't every day that three S-Class wizards and a guild master appeared together. It was an event in itself. As the chatter quieted, McGriv's powerful voice boomed across the hall. According to the ancient tradition of Fairy Tale, I now announce this year's candidates for the S-Class Mage Promotion Trial. Tension skyrocketed. The first candidate is Canna Albrona. All right. Canna cheered, her expression a mixture of excitement and disappointment. She had been hoping to see Guild Arts today, but there was no sign of him. The second candidate. Mest Grider. He made it, just as expected. Someone in the crowd nodded. The third candidate. Mickey Chickentiger. Way to go, Captain Mickey. And the fourth candidate is Warren Rocco. Warren blinked in surprise. Wait, I was chosen? Chapter 157, Rhodes is in high demand. Canna made it in again this year. With her strength, she should have a good shot at passing, right? Well, what can you do? There are always monsters in every exam. It makes sense for Mest and Mickey to be selected, but why Warren instead of Natsu or Gray? Warren's no pushover. He's strong, seriously. The four selected participants were all familiar faces. Everyone at least thought they were familiar, so there wasn't much backlash or surprise. Some people brought up Rhodes, but considering he had only been practicing magic for less than half a year, it was understandable that he wasn't selected. Then there was Natsu, who shouted in frustration. Old man. Why didn't I make it? I've gotten way stronger. You're still too weak, Natsu. Lixus replied flatly. You're not even calm enough to hear the list without yelling. That alone disqualifies you. It made sense, but Lixus's smug tone was enough to push Natsu's buttons. He nearly charged at him on the spot. Cut the nonsense, Lixus. Makarov interjected. I evaluated everyone based on power, intellect, character, and other key factors. If you want to qualify, reflect on your shortcomings, Natsu. Ugh, come on. Natsu groaned, clearly frustrated. To him, passing the S-class trial meant more than just a title. He believed it would bring him one step closer to finding Deal. Compared to Natsu, Gray was much quieter, silently wondering where he had fallen short. He even briefly considered whether his habit of stripping was the reason. Rhodes, meanwhile, was confused. I know everyone else, but who's Mest? Mest Grider. Myra replied, thinking for a moment. He joined the guild quite a while ago. You probably haven't seen him because he's rarely around. He's as mysterious as Miss Togan, but everyone knows he's strong. Elfman pointed toward a short-haired man with a scar across his face. That's him. He's the real deal. A man through and through. Rhodes still found it strange. He'd been working at the guild as a part-time server for 5 months now. If Mest had shown up during that time, Rhodes should have at least seen him once. He had even run into Miss Togan outside the guild, and though he had never met Guild Arts, who'd been away for over 2 years, he'd definitely heard of him. But Mest? No one had even mentioned his name before. When was the last time he showed up? Rhodes asked, still skeptical. Myra tapped her chin. I don't really remember. But it's definitely been a while. Rhodes nodded, unconvinced. Maybe he was just like Guild Arts. Gone for ages on a long mission. He made a mental note to check the guild's photo albums and read his sketchbook later. Maybe he'd just overlooked him. By that point, Makarov was already explaining the test's details. This year's S-Class promotion exam will take place at Clover Canyon. The location wasn't unfamiliar. Clover was the last stop on the train route from Magnolia. The canyon itself lay between Oshibana and Clover, and its terrain was notoriously complex and unpredictable. Rhodes had actually been near the area before. He and Alzak had once teamed up to take down a group of bandits and ended up passing through a village near the canyon called Sunflower Village. The exam will begin in 1 week. Makarov announced. The rules remain the same as in previous years. Only one wizard will be promoted to S-Class. Additionally, each candidate must select a partner. The specifics of the exam will be revealed once we arrive at the examination site. What I can share for now is... Makarov grinned. The 3 behind me will serve as your obstacles. Lixus raised a hand, golden lightning crackling from his palm. I won't allow the weak to rise to my level. Miss Togan's muffled voice echoed from behind his mask. I'm only doing this because Master asked me. I don't have a choice. Mirza stood tall, her expression serious. I will give it my all. Please don't go all out. Someone shouted in panic. Warren, overwhelmed with nerves, accidentally broadcasted his inner thoughts to everyone via telepathy. Lixus gave him a sharp glance, his voice edged with disdain. If you're scared, it's not too late to quit. That would save me the trouble. Warren clenched his fists. I'm not scared. In truth, when one stopped to think about it, this was just an exam. The examiners probably wouldn't go all out. Hopefully. And with a partner by your side, it would be 2-on-1. Maybe, just maybe, there was a fighting chance. The candidates quickly started thinking through their best options for partners. Meanwhile, those who hadn't been selected this year were already imagining who they'd team up with next time. For me, it's gotta be Levy. Jet and Roy exclaimed at the same time. They locked eyes, and sparks practically flew between them. Happy chimed in. For Natsu, teaming up with Rhodes would be perfect? Huh? Why Rhodes? Natsu crossed his arms with a grin. I'm teaming up with Happy, obviously. Aye, sir. Alzak and Biska exchanged a look before glancing away, flustered. They were determined to make the cut next year. Gray also felt like Rhodes would make a solid partner. Calm, strategic, and reliable. But he figured that guy was likely to qualify himself next year anyway. That's when Locke casually wrapped an arm around Gray's shoulder. If you manage to qualify next year, how about I be your partner? Alright, it's a deal. Gray said with a smile. Locke was strong. More than qualified to stand beside him. Myra tilted her head curiously. If it were you, Rhodes, who would you choose as your partner? Do we even have to ask? Rhodes grinned. I'd pick the master. Technically, you couldn't choose Myra or any of the S-Class wizards, but no one said anything about the guild master. Myra giggled behind her hand. I don't think the master's eligible. Then. Rhodes tapped his chin. I'll invite Grandma Polly Uzuka. If I can get her to come along, I'll escort her slowly through the exam field. I'd like to see who dares try anything. That got an even bigger laugh out of Myra. It was a flawless plan. In theory. But more than likely, Rhodes would get a beating from Mikhail before he could even try it. The 4 selected candidates, along with their chosen partners, will gather at the train station in 1 week. Mikhail declared. Use this time to prepare yourselves as best as you can. That's all. With that, the guild members began to disperse. Those who didn't make the cut looked exhausted. Many of them had taken on an absurd number of missions leading up to the announcement, trying to prove themselves worthy. Now, they needed rest. Some left the guild right away. Others stayed behind, chatting about the chosen participants or even starting to place bets on who would pass the exam. Meanwhile, the selected candidates began considering their partners. Mickey planned to choose someone from her team. Someone who knew her well and could coordinate smoothly during the challenges ahead. She was still deciding who. Mest had vanished as soon as the announcement ended. No one knew what he was planning. But as for Kana and Warren, to everyone's surprise, they both ended up in the same spot, saying the same thing to the same person. Rhodes, help me. They said in unison. Rhodes blinked, staring at them. Huh? Are you two seriously picking me? Chapter 158, 3 years of S exam, 1 year of mock practice. Are you sure you don't want to partner with Natsu or Gray? Generally, when choosing a partner for the S-class trial, the smart thing to do is find someone who can cover your weaknesses. If you're not the brightest, pick someone with sharp instincts. If you lack field experience, go for someone seasoned. For candidates like Kana and Warren, both of whom had brains, battle awareness, and a knack for support magic, teaming up with a powerhouse like Natsu seemed like the logical choice. Kana shook her head. Strength does matter. Natsu and Gray are both strong. But you're no slouch either, Rhodes. I heard you were actually on the list for potential candidates this year, right? Warren looked surprised. Really? Is that true? Kana groaned. Then why did you run over here to recruit him if you didn't know that? Warren scratched the back of his head. I overheard everyone talking about partner choices. Rhodes's name kept popping up, and then I saw you heading this way. You idiot. Kana clenched her fists. Was this guy trying to sabotage her chances? Warren averted her glare. Anyway, both of us want you as our partner, Rhodes. So what do you say? What could he say? It felt good being trusted by others. But at the same time, it put pressure on him not to let them down. Even though he hadn't planned to take the exam himself, going along as a partner could help him understand the difficulty firsthand. Solid prep for next year. Instinctively, his first choice would have been Warren. It was easier teaming up with a guy. Fewer chances for awkward misunderstandings. But Kana was a close friend. They'd been through a lot together, and there was no word tension between them. Wanna settle it with rock paper scissors? Rhodes suggested. Sure. Warren agreed immediately. No way. Kana shot the idea down fast. Warren's unbeatable at rock paper scissors. It was true. Warren's telepathy gave him an edge in anticipating people's moves. Challenging him in a game like that was suicide. Then how about drawing lots? Rhodes offered. That's fine by me. Kana nodded. Absolutely not. Warren countered, throwing his hands up. She's a card mage. Drawing lots is literally her specialty. She's probably already cursed the deck. Rhodes sighed. Wizards are such a pain. Myra laughed gently. You're a wizard too, you know. Rhodes glanced at her. Myra, what do you think I should do? Myra tapped her chin, thinking. Well, Kana came to ask you first, right? Why not go with her? Myra. Kana squealed and leapt across the counter to hug her. Rhodes looked on enviously. Lucky. Come on, Myra. Warren pouted. Don't be like that. Myra smiled, though it wasn't clear if she was talking to Kana or Warren. She pointed behind him. Isn't someone else looking for you? Warren turned. Max? Max waved and walked over. Hey Warren. So? Have you picked a partner yet? Just did. Warren grinned. I choose you, Max. Come help me crush this thing. Me? Max blinked. I thought for sure you'd pick Rhodes or Elfman. Warren nodded firmly. In the guild, this was the most common way to pick a partner. Just choose someone you were close to and could trust. All right. I'll give it everything I've got to help you pass the exam. Max said with enthusiasm, raising his hand. Warren grinned and met it with a crisp high five. The two of them radiated the kind of energy that said, as long as we work hard, we'll win. Rhodes? Kana turned to look at him. I'll do my best too. Rhodes said, giving her a high five and flashing a confident smile. Don't go running off after school. Huh? The reason he told her not to leave after school was because they needed to prep for the exam together. They couldn't have Kenna slacking off and drinking until the day of the test, right? That evening, in addition to Rhodes, Myra, and Elfman, Kenna also joined their usual training session in the guild's courtyard. "You guys really train here every day after work?" Kenna asked, surprised as she looked around at the training equipment and scuff marks on the ground. No wonder everyone said Rhodes was improving quickly. It wasn't just talent. He was clearly putting in the effort too. "We've been at it for a while now," Rhodes said. "It's gotten a little tougher with the weather lately, but it's also good for building cold resistance." Gray once told him he wasn't born immune to cold. He just built up resistance through training. "Even Myra," Kenna muttered. Myra, who was doing her stretches, smiled gently. "I like to work out now and then. Besides, I can help coach these two." "That makes sense." Kenna nodded. It explained why both Myra and Rhodes were progressing at such an impressive rate. "Hey, don't look at me like I'm scheming something." Rhodes laughed, waving his hand. "Anyway, let's get to the real reason we're here. Since we've officially teamed up for the exam, building trust and synergy is critical. So starting today, you'll need to..." Midway through his sentence, Rhodes started to feel a pang of guilt. Was he seriously talking about building synergy with another girl in front of Myra? He had to be out of his mind. Thankfully, Myra had supported his decision to pair with Kenna. And there were practical reasons for it. "I got it." Kenna didn't hesitate and jumped straight into warm-ups. "What's next?" Hold on, no rush," Rhodes said. "Even though the exam officially starts in a week, I think it's already begun." Kenna blinked. "What do you mean?" "The first part of the exam," Rhodes explained, "is gathering information. We need to research past S-class exams, look for patterns, try to guess what this year's challenges might be. And then train specifically for that. Cramming 1 year's worth of S-class exam training into a single week. This was the starting point. Fortunately, information gathering was the easiest step, and both Kenna and Myra could help with that. "The exam changes every year," Kenna explained. "It's usually divided into 3 stages. The first stage isn't too difficult, but the second one throws in obstacles. Usually S-class wizards or rival participants. As for the third..." Kenna hesitated, a bit embarrassed. She hadn't made it that far before. So naturally, everyone looked at Myra. "I'm sorry," Myra said gently. "I can't reveal the contents of the final stage. Even the exams from previous years had to remain confidential." Rhodes figured as much. He scratched his chin and said, half-jokingly, "What if I cling to your leg and beg you?" Elfman stepped forward, fists clenched. "Then I'll knock you out, like a real man." Myra giggled behind her hand. Fine, fine." Rhodes sighed. "Kenna, mind telling me what you do know?" "Sure." Even though her past attempts had ended in failure, seeing how serious Rhodes looked, Kenna nodded and shared everything she remembered from the first 2 stages. Rhodes took notes attentively. These first-hand experiences were invaluable. From them, he could analyze the thought process of the exam's creators. He was reminded of something his old teacher once said: "You need to understand the mind of the person setting the question. What part of your knowledge are they trying to test?" When Kenna finished recounting her memories, she looked a little downcast. "But all this is just stuff from when I failed. Is it even useful?" "Absolutely." Rhodes closed his notebook and met her gaze. "If we look at the exam structure, the guild master already gave us the answer yesterday." "The answer?" Kenna blinked. "You mean the qualities required to be selected?" "Exactly. Power, intellect, character," Rhodes explained. "Think about it. The first stage is like a basic level question. It's designed to test our foundational skills. Whether you solve it with magic or rely on your partner, the goal is to demonstrate problem-solving ability. The second stage is a more advanced challenge. It tests your raw strength and battle tactics. You'll have to push through the obstacle of either an S-class wizard or another candidate, whether by overwhelming force or smart strategy. And the third stage?" Rhodes turned to look at Myra as he spoke. "That's the bonus round. We don't have details on it, but if I had to guess, it's a test of comprehensive skill. Maybe a specific mission or scenario designed by the master. The final score likely depends on how well you complete that mission." Myra's eyes widened just a little, and Rhodes felt confident he had at least partially hit the mark. Now for the deeper dive. "This year's exam site is the Clover Canyon," Rhodes continued. "I've actually been near there before. The terrain's complex and multi-layered. So potential tasks might include..." Chapter 159, Small Punches. "I imagine it could be something simple, like a maze, or a scavenger hunt for specific items. Or they might use the harsh terrain to test our survival skills." Rhodes paused, then added with a grin. "If they wanted to be really nasty, they could throw us all in at once and turn it into a battle royale where only one team makes it to the end." But with so few participants, that seems unlikely. Truthfully, the first thing that came to Rhodes's mind was the forest of death from a certain other studio's ninja exams. But that kind of brutal competition didn't align with Fairy Tail's spirit. The guild wouldn't go that far. Kana blinked at him. She had no idea how Rhodes came up with such terrifying scenarios. Thank goodness the guild hadn't used any of those methods in past exams. Well, I doubt the first stage will be that intense, she said. Yeah, same here. Rhodes agreed. But still, we can't ignore the possibility that we might end up facing off against other teams. He crossed his arms thoughtfully. Starting tomorrow, we need to gather intel. Especially on Mest. I don't know anything about him, and charging in blind could get us eliminated fast. After that, we'll come up with strategies to deal with each team. Or multiple teams if needed. He turned to Kana. Also, the terrain of Clover Canyon will play a huge role. I've still got that topography data from before. I'll sort through it tonight and pass it along tomorrow. Okay. Kana nodded, though she looked a little dazed. Is all this really necessary just for the first stage? Rhodes caught her look and shrugged. Hey, you said the first stage wouldn't be that hard. So I figure, just this level of prep is enough for now. We'll adjust when we have more intel. Just this level of prep. Kana stared. Rhodes must have messed up his phrasing again. Just wasn't the word she'd use for any of this. Must be a language quirk. The real trouble is going to be the second stage. Rhodes continued. There might be special rules, but at the end of the day, it's still a head-on fight with an S-class wizard. That part genuinely worried him. He'd never seen Mustogan or Riza at full power, but the image of Luxus casually toying with Natsu during the battle for Fairy Tail still burned in his memory. And that brief moment when Natsu ate Luxus's lightning and forced him to get serious. The pressure was unforgettable. If Riza or Mustogan went all out, they'd probably be on Luxus's level. And encountering any of them would be a nightmare. Do you think we could bribe Myra to sneak some laxatives into their food that morning? Rhodes, I'm right here. He looked at her without a hint of shame. So, can we count on your help? Myra tilted her head with a mischievous smile. That might work under normal circumstances, but not during the exam. Wait, what do you mean normal circumstances? Elfman broke into a nervous sweat. Sis, that sounds kinda dangerous. Rhodes sighed. Guess I'll need to come up with a different underhanded strategy. But really, we shouldn't rely too much on tricks. The ideal approach is to combine our strengths and win in a straight-up fight. He glanced at his hand, then clenched his fist. That means I've got to improve as much as I can over the next few days. Even a small boost matters. If I can develop a trump card, even better. I get it. Kana nodded. For her, it wasn't about playing fair or not. She just wanted to pass the exam. More importantly, she wanted to earn the courage to finally talk to Guild Arts face to face. What about the third stage? She asked. What should we do to prepare for that? Nothing in particular. Rhodes said. The third stage should be a kind of comprehensive application test. If you've made it through the first 2 rounds, the last one probably won't be impossible to overcome. It's more about being flexible, thinking on your feet, and relying on experience to gain an edge. But I think you've got that covered. He paused, then muttered under his breath. At most, I'll think about whether we'll get a rest break before it starts, and whether it's worth conserving stamina. Not that I said that. After all, when facing 3 S-class wizards, there's barely any room to conserve strength. The only way forward is to survive and push through. Worst case, maybe he could stall for time by distracting the master with conversation. Rhodes silently ran through every possible outcome and made mental notes to plan the specifics later. Kana, meanwhile, felt her thoughts settle. For the first time, she had a clear sense of what to prepare for over the next 7 days. Choosing Rhodes as a partner really was a good decision. Teacher Myra, do you have any advice? He asked hopefully. Myra thought about it. Honestly, it's a little hard to give advice now. She had to admit, back during her own S-class exam, she mostly relied on boldness and instinct. She only increased her training slightly during the prep period. But I called you teacher, didn't I? Rhodes said playfully. Myra chuckled and rolled her wrist. All right then. Stand still. I'll demonstrate how to execute an over-the-shoulder throw. Wait, hang on. Spare me. Huh? Rhodes blinked, suddenly pausing at the mental image of being flipped. It might hurt. But then again, if Myra was the one doing it. Totally worth it. Ugh. Rhodes took a light punch to the chest. It didn't really hurt, but it snapped him out of his daydream. He grinned anyway. Myra turned her face away, suspicious of that smile. She had a feeling this guy was definitely thinking something shady. Kana observed all this and sighed. Maybe choosing Rhodes wasn't such a great idea after all. All right. Rhodes clapped his hands. Let's get to training. Once we're done with the basic drills, we'll move on to standard sparring exercises. A waxing crescent moon cast its soft glow across the guild courtyard, lighting up the thin veil of snow that blanketed the ground. 4 people moved in silence, each driven by a different purpose. Their synchronized steps and fluid movements made them look like dancers rehearsing under the moonlight. It sounded beautiful in theory. But Rhodes, who was right in the middle of it, felt absolutely miserable. The temperature wasn't cold enough, and the snow wasn't thick enough. Instead of a nice snowy surface, the ground was damp and slick. Every step came with the risk of slipping. One wrong move in the middle of a spar could land him flat in the mud. Not a pleasant thought. He sighed and glanced over at Myra. Myra, couldn't the guild spare some funds to build an indoor training facility? We don't have the budget for it right now. Myra replied, thoughtful. And with the way the guild is laid out, renovations would be tricky. She frowned slightly, clearly annoyed at the slushy mess underfoot. I'll ask Lockie to lay new flooring across the yard tomorrow. That should help. Truthfully, they'd already had the courtyard paved once before. Mostly to accommodate Rhodes and Elfman's sparring. But it had gotten wrecked within a few days. After that, Rhodes hadn't had the heart to ask for a replacement. Besides, he needed bare earth for his Krug takeover form to tunnel effectively. Still, with the S-class exam coming up, comfort and preparation outweighed convenience. A clean, solid surface was a necessity now. The next day, of all the S-class exam candidates, only Kana showed up at the guild. It seemed the others had already gone off to start their training in earnest. Rhodes frowned slightly. Not ideal. Looks like we're not the only ones trying to prep last minute. They're probably cramming too, hoping to anticipate the challenges. Kana crossed her arms. I doubt that. It's more likely they're just doing the usual kind of special training. I don't think they're planning as far ahead as you are. Still, as someone who'd participated in the exam more than once, Kana realized that. For the first time. Her repeated attempts had given her a bit of an edge. Rhodes, however, wasn't one to underestimate anyone, especially fellow fairy tale members. Every wizard in the guild had unique strengths, and he knew better than to dismiss them. We shouldn't get complacent. He said seriously. Try and find out who the others chose as partners. I'll dig through the guild archives and see if I can find any record of Mest. Chapter 160, Memory. Rhodes began his investigation with the guild's photo albums. Since Myra had said that Mest had joined Fairy Tale a long time ago, even if there weren't individual portraits, he should at least show up in group photos, right? Even Loke, who mostly showed up in magazines, was featured in a few, including a big group shot from the last Harvest Festival. But after flipping all the way through to the last page, Rhodes didn't see a single trace of Mest. He then checked the art collection Ritas kept in the guild library, which recorded guild moments in the form of illustrations. Still, no sign of Mest. Was this guy really as mysterious as Mistogen? Rhodes frowned. It seemed unlikely. But not impossible. After all, when he asked Myra, Kana, and Elfman about Mest, none of them gave him a clear answer. They all hesitated, as if struggling to recall any solid details. If he wanted to learn more about Mest, his only remaining option was to check past mission records. But, having helped Myra sort through those records before, Rhodes knew just how massive that archive was. The guild could log dozens of jobs in a single month. Going back years would be like diving headfirst into an ocean of parchment. He winced at the thought. I really need to borrow those enchanted glasses. Too bad Levy isn't here today. Levy had taken on several solo jobs recently. Even though she didn't seem confident in herself, she'd still wanted to give it a try during exam season. There were few people like Rhodes who genuinely had no interest in the S-class trials from the start. Wait. The member registry. That should help. At the very least, I can see when Mest joined the guild and narrow things down. The list began, as expected, with the guild master, Mikarov. Next was Porly Uzuka, then guild arts, followed by Mikau and Wakaba. The list was sorted in the order of when each wizard joined the guild. Naturally, it didn't include those who had resigned or passed away. Except for the legendary first master, Mavis. Rhodes reasonably suspected there was another master list somewhere that included every fairy tale member since its founding, but this wasn't it. He scanned the names from top to bottom, then flipped from the end back again. He saw his own name. But still no Mest. To be sure, he read it through a third time. Still nothing. What the heck is going on? Rhodes marched over to the master's office with the roster in hand, a heavy feeling in his chest. He held the book out to Mikarov, expression serious. Master, what's going on with Mest? Isn't he supposed to be part of our guild? Mikarov blinked. Of course he is. Why do you ask? Because he's not listed here in the registry. I also couldn't find him in any of the guild's photos or illustration albums. Rhodes replied, flipping to the final page. Even my name is here. Which means this book was updated recently. If Mest really joined years ago, how could his name not be here? Mikarov let out a small groan. That was a problem. He had purposefully removed every photograph that included Mest, storing them away securely. As for the registry, the guild roster was enchanted with a kind of living tracking magic. If a member's guild mark disappeared for any reason, resignation, death, or magical concealment, their name would vanish from the list automatically. Mest's fairy tale mark had been temporarily erased to let him infiltrate the Magic Council. Naturally, his name disappeared as well. It wasn't part of any high-level conspiracy, it was just thorough espionage work. That way, if the council ever came to audit the roster, there'd be no risk of exposure. The whole point of the registry was to simplify those kinds of reviews. Mikarov hadn't expected Rhodes to stumble across it like this. He rubbed his temples. Why did you suddenly start investigating Mest? Because I'm Kenna's partner for the S-class exam. Rhodes said matter-of-factly. Shouldn't I be researching potential opponents? You know how I operate. Mikarov could only nod helplessly. Indeed, this kid had always made a habit of investigating the local situation thoroughly before accepting even minor missions outside Magnolia. Let alone something as serious as the S-class promotion exam. Being cautious was, of course, a good thing. But at this moment, even Makarov hadn't considered such meticulous detail. Should he temporarily restore Mest's guild emblem? But that guy might be reporting to the Magic Council at this very moment. Wouldn't that be selling out one of his own? Ahem. Makarov cleared his throat and said. I do have some photos of Mest. He rarely took any, so I set them aside for safekeeping. As for the roster, I must have missed him when I was updating it. Rhodes gave him a look. One that practically said, do you think I'm that gullible? It wasn't hard to print a few extra photos. But to overlook something as important as the official member list? Then, could you at least retrieve some of Mest's mission logs? Rhodes asked. I mean just the standard ones. Nothing sensitive. There shouldn't be an issue with that, right? At this time, even those ordinary-looking missions are considered classified. Makarov replied, starting to feel a little uneasy under Rhodes's unwavering gaze. Lying to his own guild member like this? No. I wasn't lying. In any case, Mest is definitely a fairy tale wizard. That much is certain. Then. Rhodes suddenly paused. Wait a second. He took a few steps back and glanced around the guild hall. Urza, can you come over here for a moment? Urza approached. What's going on? Myra, who wasn't far away, also walked over quickly, curious. She had a feeling she'd missed some juicy gossip while busy serving food. Urza, stand here and get ready for battle. Myra, step back just a little and stand over here. Rhodes gently pulled Myra behind Urza for cover. Urza looked confused. Battle? Against who? Makarov frowned. What are you up to now? Rhodes crouched down slightly and nudged Myra's head to duck lower. Myra lightly slapped his hand away, but the playful look on his face made her laugh. She sensed something silly was coming and went along with it. Then, Rhodes asked cautiously. Master. Is there any magic in the world that can control a person's mind? Veins bulged on Makarov's forehead. Was this kid seriously suspecting him of being under mind control? He even called Urza over in case the possessed master suddenly lost control and attacked someone. And needed someone strong enough to stop him? Makarov couldn't decide whether to be angry or impressed by how cautious Rhodes was. Even at a time like this. Ha ha ha. Myra clutched her stomach, laughing uncontrollably. She had no idea what led to this moment, but seeing Rhodes say all that with a straight face, and actually preparing for a possible outburst from the guild master, was just too much. It was hilarious. The master's been brainwashed? Are you serious? Urza asked as she summoned a long sword into her hand without hesitation. She was ready to shield both Myra and Rhodes the instant anything seemed off. Makarov let out a long sigh. Mental magic, by nature, becomes easy to resist once the victim becomes aware of the manipulation. He looked at Rhodes and continued. Unless the caster's magical power is vastly superior to mine. So much so that we're not even on the same level. It's not possible. Urza silently dispelled her sword. That kind of threat wasn't just unlikely. It was basically a doomsday scenario. If someone that powerful were scheming behind the scenes, there would be no point in resisting anyway. Rhodes thought it over and then asked. What about? Makarov cut him off with a sharp glance. You're going to ask if memory magic is possible next, aren't you? Rhodes nodded. In theory. Makarov said. Memory-altering magic can affect individuals with much stronger magic power than the caster. But again, If the target becomes aware of the tampering, it becomes relatively easy to break free from it. I've already checked myself. I'm not under any kind of memory manipulation. That answer enough for you? He shot a glare at Rhodes, who was still crouching behind Urza, and seriously considered knocking the kid on the head. At that moment, Myra and Urza blinked in realization, exchanging glances. Master, They both started, but Makarov raised a hand to silence them. He gave Rhodes one last exasperated look, then hopped down from the counter and clasped his hands behind his back. Come with me. Chapter 161, Kana will cry. Memory magic, like many spells that target the mind, is surprisingly fragile once a person becomes aware of it, or is alerted to its presence by others. Makarov knew this all too well. But he couldn't let them talk about it openly. Not here, not now. He quietly led the three of them into a secluded room, where he finally prepared to explain the truth. What I'm about to share is a guild secret. If this information leaks out, it could cause serious problems. And Mest's safety would be at risk. Myra and Urza looked at one another and nodded. Anything that could harm Fairy Tail will remain confidential. They promised in unison. Rhodes also nodded, though he couldn't resist the urge to ask. Are we even a legal guild? But after thinking about it, he figured that even if Makarov flat out told him Fairy Tail was secretly a dark guild, he'd probably still blame it all on the Magic Council. Makarov began to explain Mest's story. It started a few years ago. Mest Grider was a skilled wizard. He had mastered both memory manipulation magic and spatial magic. Teleportation spells. At the time, Makarov was aware that powerful forces were targeting Fairy Tail's secrets. Some even hoped to disband the guild entirely. So he decided to plant someone inside the Magic Council. Someone he could trust to bring back valuable information. Mest eagerly volunteered. He had a strong desire to prove himself and make a meaningful contribution. But what Makarov didn't expect was just how thorough his plan would be. To avoid any suspicion, Mest altered not only his own memories, but also the memories of every other guild member, erasing all evidence of his existence within Fairy Tail. He then infiltrated the council under the alias Duran Bolt. Makarov disapproved of this extreme measure, but the plan was already in motion. From then on, every time they met in secret, Makarov had to restore Mest's memories manually. And then watch him revert into a paranoid watchdog by the next day. Evil guild master. Mest would say with conviction. One day, I'll bring you to justice. He was so committed to his role that it was almost painful to witness. Still, thanks to his relentless efforts and suspiciously polished behavior, no one ever uncovered his identity. In fact, he rose through the council's ranks rapidly and gained access to valuable intelligence. This time, Duran Bolt had requested to return as Mest and take part in the S-Class Wizard promotion trial. Under the pretense of investigating the secrets of Fairy Tail. Makarov agreed. He felt that if Mest truly passed the exam on his own merits, then he would formally promote him to S-Class and let the whole undercover agent business rest once and for all. What he didn't expect was for someone to catch on to the ruse before the exam even began. And not the council. Not the other guild members. Not even Mest himself. No. Of all people, Rhodes figured it out. All because he said he was helping Kana prepare for the exam. What kind of exam prep involves unearthing the identity of a deep cover agent? Ha ha. Ha. Rhodes laughed awkwardly, sensing the pressure in the air. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Master. But, since his memories were altered, how are we supposed to gather intel on him? Myra stood beside Rhodes, covering her mouth and laughing. Honestly, how could she not? The whole thing was just too funny. Makarov sighed and said. You don't need to go out of your way to investigate him. Sooner or later, you'll run into him at the council. If you've got questions, now's the time to ask. Rhodes hesitated, then asked. Master, are you going to erase our memories after this? Makarov shook his head. No. We've come this far. I won't do that. I only ask that you don't tell anyone else. Keep this between us. Urza's expression grew serious. You mentioned someone coveting the guild's secret. Who exactly is our enemy? That's something only the guild master is allowed to know. Makarov replied. And whoever it is, it's not someone you need to worry about. Not yet. In truth, if that secret were ever revealed to the world, Fairy Tail could easily find itself standing against all of it. The magic of eternity, infinite magic power. Both were too great a temptation for anyone with ambition. It would be enough to turn even allies into enemies. But Makarov couldn't burden the younger members with that truth. Not yet. To Rhodes, though, the message felt clear, the enemy is too dangerous. Leave it to me. You just focus on growing stronger. Whatever pride he'd felt over his recent progress vanished. If even someone like Urza wasn't told the full truth, then the threat must be beyond anything he could imagine. The pressure hit him like a tidal wave. Myra gave him a gentle pat on the back and said with a smile. I don't know what's going through your head, but I'm pretty sure the master didn't mean for you to get all worked up like this. Makarov noticed Rhodes's conflicted expression and added. Don't overthink it. As long as you keep this a secret, it's not as serious as it sounds. But is there really any secret that stays hidden forever? Rhodes wondered. The truth was, he didn't have enough knowledge or experience yet. He wasn't ready to carry the weight of something this big. He changed the subject. Then, about Mest. Aren't you worried that one day, someone from our own guild could be the one to destroy it? The idea made him uneasy. Fairy Tale had so many gifted wizards. Who's to say one of them, like Mest, might not go too far someday? What if one day, Durandbolt rose through the ranks of the council and issued the order to disband Fairy Tale with his own hands? Makarov smiled patiently. If that day ever comes, I'll stop him myself. He chuckled softly. You really like to worry about strange things, don't you? Who else preparing for the S-Class Wizard promotion exam would flip through the guild's photo album and membership roster just to see if there were any undercover agents among the candidates? Speaking of the exam, Makarov turned to Rhodes and asked. Rhodes, are you really not going to participate this time? I noticed that your mission count recently is just about enough to qualify. Rhodes gave a small, helpless smile. Forget it. I've already committed to being Kanna's partner. If I suddenly ditch her just to take the exam myself, she'd probably cry. It's only been one day. Makarov muttered. He couldn't help but think, if Rhodes were to take part in the exam, he'd have to avoid including any tasks that put him in direct conflict with others. No, that wouldn't be fair. To anyone but Rhodes. Forget it. We'll cross that bridge when we came to it. This kid either causes no trouble, or the kind that turns the whole guild upside down. The three of them walked back to the guild tavern together. Rhodes let out a dramatic sigh. Ah, I feel like I've boarded a pirate ship. Myra giggled beside him. So are you calling us thieves? Rhodes nodded thoughtfully. Well, it's not impossible. The scariest part is, I'm really enjoying myself on this pirate ship. I don't think I ever want to get off. Mirza smiled warmly. That's what it means to be in a guild. Such a simple line, but it carried so much truth. Just as Mirza was about to leave, Rhodes called out. Wait a second, Mirza. I need to ask you something. What is it? It's about you. Rhodes said. I wanted to know, how many sets of armor do you have in total? Which ones do you prefer in battle? And if you were fighting me and Kanna, which would you use? Also, what are their strengths and weaknesses? Since he had the opportunity, he figured he might as well collect intel straight from the source. And with Riz's straightforward personality, it wasn't like she'd mind the questions. He could even tell her exactly why he was asking. Oh? Is this for your S-Class exam prep? Riza said with a knowing smile. It's fine. I don't mind sharing. She crossed her arms, eyes twinkling. As for how many armors I have, more than 100. She then started listing her favorites like she was reading a menu. Heaven's Wheel armor, Purgatory armor, Flight armor, Flame Empress armor. She didn't stop at 10. Or 20. She also broke down her tactics and combinations without holding back. Can is tricky because her magic can switch attributes and target specific weaknesses. But my armors aren't locked into one setup. I can combine, say, Flame Empress armor with Thunder Empress spear or Seeking sword, depending on the situation. Rhodes was starting to get a headache. Finding a weak point in an S-Class wizard's loadout clearly wasn't going to be easy. Chapter 162, This is just too hard. Riza had always been a straightforward person, earnest and unguarded. She answered all of Rhodes' questions about her magic and fighting style without a hint of reservation. After explaining, she even took the time to encourage both Rhodes and Kanna. Rhodes, not missing a beat, moved on to ask about Mistogan and Lixus. As for Mistogan, Riza said thoughtfully, I haven't interacted with him much myself, but I do know he specializes in illusion and sleep magic. He's the one who once cast a spell strong enough to put the entire guild to sleep. She paused, thinking aloud. A spell like that must require preparation. I think the key lies in the staffs he carries. If you're going to fight him, your best chance is to feign sleep before he draws the staff. Or strike him while he's casting. Hee hee. Rhodes chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, easier said than done. Neither of those options seemed particularly doable for the average person. Unless he really followed through on that wild idea he brought up on the train once. Having Alzik and Biska snipe him from behind before Mistogan got his spell off. But Rhodes doubted he'd go unnoticed. He could already sense when powerful eyes were watching him. Mistogan was on another level. Ambushing him wouldn't be so simple. You've already seen Lixus in action. Mirza continued. He uses lightning magic and possesses immense magical power inherited from the master. He's a monster. Speed, power, range, Close quarters, everything. She frowned slightly. Honestly, I don't know if I could beat him even with my Lightning Empress armor. Rhodes sighed. This is going to be rough. The road to becoming an S-class wizard was never meant to be easy. Mirza said, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. But I believe in you. If anyone can rise to that level, it's you. Myra chimed in with a teasing smile. Mirza, just a reminder. Kana is the one taking the exam. Huh? Mirza blinked. Ah. Right. Kana. She suddenly looked flustered. As one of the examiners, I can't believe I made such a basic mistake. I must atone by giving 120% effort during the test. Rhodes waved his hands quickly. That's really not necessary. But Mirza wasn't listening anymore. It's decided. I'll start my pre-exam training immediately. Wait. Before Rhodes could stop her, Mirza had already marched out of the guild with her sword in hand, presumably off to train until sunrise. Era. Myra laughed, clearly enjoying the chaos without a care in the world. Myra, please keep this a secret. Rhodes said grimly. If word gets out, especially to whoever ends up facing Mirza, they'll kill me. Myra tilted her head playfully. But I'm not very good at keeping secrets. Rhodes thought for a second. How about, I treat you to ice cream next time? Deal. She beamed. I'll try my best. Even in winter, ice cream was irresistible. A hot seafood stew over here. Coming right up, Myra called out. Rhodes turned toward the customer and grabbed a clean cloth to help with service. Hot seafood stew? In this weather? Must be doing well for himself. That guy clearly didn't take on any jobs, so how the heck was he affording this? That evening, the four of them gathered again in the guild courtyard. The ground had been freshly paved with wooden planks, something Myra had asked Lockie to arrange during the day. The payment? A detailed drawing of a mechanical clamp that Rhodes had sketched out, a diagram Lockie absolutely adored. Rhodes couldn't help but wonder if Lockie would ever find a boyfriend. And if she did. Well, he offered a moment of silent sympathy for the poor guy. Kana shared her latest findings with Rhodes. Mickey's partner is confirmed, it's Joey. Joey? Rhodes raised an eyebrow, immediately picturing a buff figure. You mean that Joey? The guy whose muscles are even more over the top than Elfman's? Elfman looked mildly offended, but he couldn't really argue. When it came to muscle training, no one in Fairy Tale could rival Joey. That guy. He's a real man. Kana ignored Elfman's commentary and continued. Yep, that's him. His magic lets him enhance the muscle strength of himself and his allies, which pairs really well with Mickey's brawler style. Rhodes nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Both of them specialize in close combat. And we'll also need to be ready for Mickey's magic bird. Her interference might make things tricky. Be nice to Little Bye if you run into them, okay? Myra chimed in gently. Little Bye. That was the name of Mickey's enchanted bird companion. While it could talk, it wasn't like Happy or Carla. It didn't count as a partner and was more of a support pet. It often transformed into a microphone when Myra performed and helped her send messages across the guild, which made Myra especially fond of it. Don't worry. Rhodes replied with a nod, then paused. Wait. Are you assuming we'll have enough energy left over to hold back against 2.5 fighters? Ah. Myra looked a little flustered. That might have come off as impolite toward Mickey and Joey. It's just, because I believe in you and Kana. You're both really strong. Her words gave Kana a much-needed confidence boost. Anyway, as for Mest, his partner seems to be Wan, but Mest hasn't shown up all day, and Wan refuses to confirm it. Wan, full name Wanchanzi, was from Joey's generation. Their relationship was kind of like Macau and Wakabas, rivals, but also good friends. The main difference was that Wan didn't talk much. He was the type of person who stayed quiet no matter what. Even if you hit him with a stick, he still wouldn't say a word, which was probably why he and Joey argued far less than Macau and Wakaba ever did. Still, Wan might not have fewer fights under his belt. Just because he didn't talk much didn't mean he couldn't throw down. He's just got that kind of personality, huh? Rhodes said. I don't think I've exchanged more than 3 sentences with him in the past 6 months. He suspected Mest had chosen Wan as his partner precisely because of that personality. It lowered the risk of getting exposed. Yeah, his magic lets him transform his arms into steel hounds for attacking. Kana added. Kind of reminds me of Elfman. Elfman immediately looked offended. Why do people keep comparing others to me? His magic's nothing like mine. Well, he's still a close-range fighter. Rhodes said. But the real trouble is Mest's space magic. He shared what the master had told him. Though, of course, he left out anything about memory magic. He can teleport. If you're even a bit slow, he could hit you with a sneak attack before you realize it. It was basically unlimited blink. And he could even bring allies along with him. Rhodes was half jealous, practically drooling at the thought. Spatial magic is a pain, Kana said. But not impossible to deal with. Her plan was simple, bait him into making a move. Whether it was by showing an opening or setting a trap with her card magic, there were always options if you kept your head. After reviewing their opponent's strengths and weaknesses and drawing up a few rough battle plans, the two moved on to the next topic. Mirza gave away some things earlier, Rhodes said, recounting her words from that afternoon. And though she didn't say it outright, I'm pretty sure we'll be facing an S-class wizard no matter what. In other words, one team will be eliminated in the first round, and then each of the remaining 3 teams will have to take on a different S-class wizard. Chapter 163, Reflecting on oneself 3 times a day. Sometimes, knowing more wasn't always a good thing. Especially when it messed with your mindset. Just going from maybe facing an S-class wizard to definitely facing one changed everything for Kana. The pressure was completely different now. After all, she had already lost to 2 out of the 3 examiners. Rhodes was handling it better. He had mentally prepared for the worst-case scenario from the start. Now he simply had more detailed knowledge about the 3 S-class wizards. Lixas, with an overwhelming thunder magic. Mistogan, the mysterious illusionist. And Urza, the one Kana least wanted to run into. Urza was terrifyingly versatile, mastering both close-range and long-range combat. With her arsenal of armor and weapons, she could call upon various elemental magics and even combine them for complex attacks. To put it bluntly, Urza was like an all-around, powered-up version of Kana. And if they had to face her, Kana's only real advantage was her teammate, a teammate who, 5 months ago, was flattened by Urza in a single punch. Just remembering that moment was enough to make Kana's confidence waver again. Yeah, the opponents are monsters, Rhodes admitted. But to become S-class, you've gotta be ready to become a monster yourself. He tried to keep things optimistic, speaking like a strategist while encouraging his partner. If the master chose you to take the exam, it means you have the potential to stand among them. You may not be there yet, but your partner is there to help close the gap. Whatever you can't do, your teammate will do for you. I think that's why the master requires everyone to bring a partner. It's not just to test your synergy. It's a fundamental part of what it means to be in fairy tale. To become a monster like them. Kana repeated softly. And rely on companions to cover the rest. She hadn't thought about any of that. She never asked herself how strong she wanted to be or what it truly meant to be S-class. She just wanted to pass the exam so she could stand before Guild Arts and finally call him dad. She never gave a second thought to what it meant to carry the title of S-class wizard. Was someone like her really worthy of it? A real man. Elfman suddenly shouted, so full of emotion that tears glimmered in his eyes. Only someone who reaches S-class is a true man, Kana. Myra, ever smiling, gently reminded. Kana's a girl, you know. And besides, what did being manly have to do with being S-class? Elfman blinked. Then, as if struck by genius, he recovered, puffed out his chest, and declared, my sister is a man too. Myra kept her smile, but her clenched fists trembled with dangerous intent. This brother of hers really couldn't be helped. But for now, Kana was the focus. Myra gently patted her on the back. Getting lectured by the newbie, huh? Newbie? Kana glanced at Rhodes. Right, he had only joined the guild less than 6 months ago. She'd been here for 11 years. Whether it was her mindset or her skills, she shouldn't be lagging behind him. He had put in so much time and effort because she asked him to be her partner. She couldn't let that go to waste. Kana took a deep breath and straightened her back. This time, we'll beat them. We're gonna pass this exam. All right. Rhodes grinned. Then let's get to work. Let's start by simulating a fight against Mickey and Joey. For training purposes, Myra and Elfman would be their sparring opponents. Myra was skilled in close combat, making her a solid stand-in for Mickey's brawling style. Elfman's brute force fighting was similar to Joey's, especially when he activated takeover magic. Of course, it was just sparring, not a real battle. Many times during training, Rhodes and Kana would pause after each move to predict how their opponents might react. Then Myra and Elfman would reposition themselves accordingly. And just as often, Rhodes and Kana would suddenly change tactics and go in the opposite direction. When simulating a fight against Mest and Wan, the routine was similar, except Mest's spatial magic made things much more difficult. All they could do was analyze possible teleportation patterns and help Kana plan how to set up traps in advance. Dealing with someone who could appear anywhere was tricky business. The rest, basic training, didn't need much elaboration. After 3 rounds of mock battles, they had a solid framework for how to approach the first stage of the exam. Starting tomorrow, they would focus on the next critical goal, spend 5 days strengthening their magic reserves and preparing for the biggest challenge, facing the 3 S-class wizards. Today had been another productive day. After wrapping up training and bidding everyone good night, Rhodes returned home, soaked in a hot bath, and sank into bed with a satisfied sigh. "Warm," he called, half lazily, to his companion. "Lights off." Warm obediently clicked its little pincers and turned off the lights. Just as everything settled into quiet, Rhodes suddenly shot upright in bed. "I must reflect on myself 3 times a day," he declared aloud to no one in particular. "Have I been hit with mind control today? Have my memories been tampered with? Am I really still me?" A pause. "Yeah. All good." He nodded to himself, lay back down, and pulled the blanket over his head. In the corner, Warm blinked in the dark with its little beady eyes. Has the master finally lost it? Will there still be delicious Poro treats in the future? Time flew by in a whirlwind of intense training and anticipation. Before they knew it, the day of the S-Class promotion exam had arrived. It was already mid-December, and the chill in the air had deepened. Rhodes walked into the guild proudly wearing his matching coat with Myra, showing off a little as he passed by the bar counter. Afterward, he and Kana made their way to the station, ready to embark on their journey. Before leaving, he handed the coat to Myra for safekeeping and changed into another set of warm clothes. After all, an exam meant battles, and battles meant injuries. Rhodes could take a hit or two just fine, but if that matching coat got damaged? Now that would really hurt. Myra found it both funny and a little annoying, but still helped Rhodes fold up the coat and reminded him to be careful. Truthfully, Rhodes had wanted to swing by the guild storage room to pick up a few things before the trip. Maybe to relax a bit, or maybe just out of habit. Unfortunately, the warehouse door had 4 new locks added to it today, with a clear no entry sign hanging prominently. Rhodes sighed. Forced to leave empty-handed, he felt a little uneasy about what lay ahead. He and Kana were the last team to arrive. Everyone else had already gone straight to the station and were standing in place, looking around with wide, anxious eyes. Max looked like he wanted to chat and lighten the mood, but Moran quickly clamped a hand over his mouth, afraid he'd accidentally reveal any details of their strategy. Makarov stood at the front, glancing down the line and counting heads. Once he was sure everyone was accounted for, he waved his hand. "All right, everyone's here. Time to head out." Kana raised a hand. "Aren't we waiting for Lixus and the others?" "They left early to make arrangements at the exam site," Makarov replied. "If you've got questions, ask them now before we depart." Rhodes immediately raised his hand. "Can I run back and grab?" "No." Makarov cut him off flatly, not even waiting to hear the rest. The items stored in the guild weren't meant to be used against fellow guild members, especially during the exam next. Rhodes pouted. "Why do I feel like the master's picking on me? The S-Class exam was serious business. Couldn't he at least bring a few crystal balls to play a game and ease the tension?" Just then, Mest, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stepped up to the station platform, leaned against the doorframe, and mumbled while chewing thoughtfully. I really wonder what train metal tastes like." Rhodes stared at him, confused. What on earth? What is this guy even talking about? Joey, the well-muscled brawler beside him, tilted his head in concern. "You'll crack your teeth doing that, you know." As if on cue, 3 of Joey's teeth popped loose and bounced across the platform with a clink clink clink. "Joey, your teeth." Mickey scolded with her hands on her hips. "Seriously, can you please stop losing your teeth in public?" "Wait, losing teeth is a habit?" Rhodes blinked in disbelief. "Ha ha ha ha." Max suddenly burst out laughing, clearly struck by an idea. Hey. If we strung together all the teeth Joey's lost, do you think we could make a necklace? Like, a whole tooth necklace?" Leaning closer to Makarov, Rhodes whispered with a straight face. "Master, you're really putting these people on a train?" Chapter 164, The exam begins. We have no choice. The tickets are already bought and everyone's accounted for. We can't just swap to a horse-drawn carriage last minute. Makarov sighed. He had a headache just thinking about it. He hoped that once everyone got on the train, they'd at least try to behave. Wishful thinking. The moment they boarded, a wide circle of empty seats formed around the 9 guild members. All the other passengers instinctively kept their distance from this group of peculiar misfits. Rhodes figured that if he brought a few more people next time, they wouldn't even need to book private compartments, they'd get the same treatment for free. Kana, realizing her fellow candidates were such a chaotic bunch, finally relaxed a little. With her nerves eased, she started observing Mest closely. Mest, who was currently gnawing on the back of the train seat, caught Kana staring and immediately grew wary. Did she notice something? Was my act slipping? He bit the seat even harder. Nearby, Joey was flexing his muscles for his teammates. Despite the chilly weather in the carriage, he was still shirtless, making people wonder if he had trained under Gray at some point. Nikki's sharp gaze swept across the other contestants like she was ready to throw down right then and there. Max and Joey were joking around, with Max even reaching out to pinch Joey's biceps. Clearly, their friendship was genuine. Warren, meanwhile, observed quietly while keeping an eye on Max to prevent him from blurting out their team strategy. Wachansey, as always, was silent, leaning back in his seat, not uttering a word. And Rhodes? Rhodes was worried about the master. McRiv sat stiffly, alert as ever, like a field trip teacher supervising a rowdy class of elementary schoolers. Only difference was, the teacher worried for the kids, but McRiv was worried for everyone else. The train chugged steadily northward, the temperature dropping little by little. Outside the window, the forests thinned and turned golden. Only evergreens like pines and cypresses kept their color. And even they looked different from the lush vibrance of summer. Univaz Station. Kulnuk Station. Oshibana Station. As they passed through city after city, the scenery became more barren. Warren grew visibly tense with each mile. "You okay, Warren?" Rhodes asked, glancing at the sweat on his forehead. "I'm fine." "Really?" Warren replied, his voice stiff. "It's just, we're getting close." Max laughed. "Come on, did you forget? Warren is afraid of heights. We're about to hit the canyon bridge." "Oh, right." Kanna clapped her hands, grinning mischievously. "Wanna back out now? The test site is right by the canyon, you know." "Don't joke like that. I worked hard to get here." Warren quickly shut his eyes tight as the train began its crossing. "Besides, the exam's in the canyon, not above it. The railway bridge spanned directly over the canyon." Rhodes leaned out slightly to look, catching sight of the jagged terrain below. He wasn't sure whether to call the formations mountains or giant stone pillars. If he had to compare, it resembled a stone forest. But while those had a mysterious beauty, this place looked desolate and dangerous. One textbook claimed the canyon was the result of a massive prehistoric earthquake. Another said it was carved by millions of years of erosion. And then there was the least believed theory. That this was once a battlefield between two dragons, and the land had never recovered from their clash. Rhodes couldn't help but think, maybe the most unscientific explanation was actually the right one, especially if Natsu and Wendy weren't lying about being raised by dragons. Everyone got off at the first stop after crossing the bridge, Kroba Station. From there, McRiv led the group back a few kilometers along the canyon's edge, then hiked several more northward. By this time of year, the northern winds had already begun to blow, and the gusts near the canyon were especially biting. Everyone instinctively pulled their coats tighter around them. Rhodes and Kanna trailed at the end of the group, quietly observing the terrain with care. "This isn't an exam, it's a hiking trip," Mickey complained as she marched forward, clearly annoyed. Warren's knees were still trembling. He leaned heavily against his partner, Max. "Who even hikes in a place like this?" Max sighed. "If you're like this now, how are you going to survive the actual exam?" "Wait, it'll be fine once we're down in the canyon, right?" Warren said, nervously glancing around. "Master, how much farther is it?" "We're here," McRiv said, pointing to a rocky peak in the center of the canyon. A large fairy tale flag fluttered proudly at its summit. "That's the starting point of the exam. From there," he continued, "you'll head north through a natural maze. At the end of the maze are 3 separate exits, each marked with one of our guild flags." Kanna glanced at Rhodes. Did they guess correctly? It really was a maze? "We might win this, we could just fly over it." But then again, if that was possible, someone like Mest, with his space magic would have the advantage. McRiv began laying out the rules. Each of the 3 exits is sealed with a magical barrier that can only be unlocked with a special key. There are only 3 keys in total, he explained. And they've been scattered somewhere inside the maze. Your task is simple. First, go to the bulletin board at the starting point and write down your team name. Then, head into the maze, locate one of the keys, and reach one of the 3 exits. Max raised a hand. "Only one team per exit?" McRiv nodded. "That's right. Once a team enters an exit, it closes behind them. That means a maximum of 3 teams can pass this stage. Then, Master, how exactly are we supposed to get down there?" Warren asked, his voice trembling with dread. McRiv replied matter-of-factly. "You'll have to find your own way down, of course." Warren went pale. This was the worst possible news. Mickey flexed her fingers inside her tiger claw gloves and asked, "Master, if we can't find a key, are we allowed to steal one from another team?" "Yes," McRiv said calmly. "Before reaching the exit, stealing is permitted." He pulled out 8 small flares and handed them out. "The terrain below is tricky, and there are some dangerous creatures down there. If you're in trouble, you can fire a flare for help. But remember, using a flare means giving up the exam. I'll come to retrieve you right away. Wait. I've got one very important question." Rhodes raised his hand. What does the key actually look like, and how big is it? Makarov chuckled. It looks something like this. He transformed his body into a tall wooden sign shaped like the fairy tale emblem. A moment later, he returned to normal. The real thing is about the same size as me. He added. The key was more than half the size of a person. Big enough to spot, but definitely not easy to carry. Especially while in combat. Holding it would slow you down, and carrying it on your back wasn't much better. One thing was clear, once you got your hands on a key, you had to get to an exit fast and avoid conflict. Everyone silently assessed the new information. Makarov raised his hand. Then, the first round of the Fairy Tale S-Class Wizard promotion exam begins now. Summon, Raptors. With a flash of magic, 2 large red raptors swooped into view. Rhodes and Kanna each climbed onto one. The raptors sprinted a few steps, then leapt from the cliff, soaring toward the flag planted on a rock outcropping deep in the canyon below. That's cheating. Come on, Joey. Mickey shouted. Right behind you. Joey responded. Together, the two launched themselves off the cliff edge, landing on a lower ledge with perfect coordination before bounding down from there with wild agility. Meanwhile, Mest placed a hand on Huan Chanzi's shoulder. The two vanished in a blink, and reappeared at the bottom of the canyon. Then, their figures flickered forward in bursts of teleportation, moving even faster than the Crimson Raptors in flight. Finally, the last team. Come on, Warren. We're falling behind. Max shouted, trying to drag his partner forward. But Warren clung to a boulder for dear life, face scrunched in panic. No way, it's way too high. Do you want to take this exam or not? Max yelled, exasperated. At least let me prepare myself mentally first. Warren wailed. Chapter 165, Group Voice Chat. When Rhodes and Kanna landed at their destination, the notice board at the foot of the mountain already had the names of Mest and Wan written on it. Space magic is seriously convenient. Rhodes muttered as he picked up a pen and added their names alongside Kanna's. For a moment, he even considered erasing Mest's name, but in the end, decided against it. They were all part of Fairy Tale, there was no need to be that underhanded. Alright, time to get moving. Kanna declared as she pulled out a deck of cards and began her divination right there on the spot. Rhodes summoned a group of merc wolves to fan out and scout ahead. He also sent the 2 raptors flying above to search for the key from the sky. In addition, he summoned 2 scuttle crabs and had them hide somewhere near the starting point. This, in game terms, was like placing wards for vision. His main search force was the merc wolves. He instructed them to track the scent of the president and Ursa, since they were likely involved in hiding the keys. It was a shame he didn't have a scent sample for Luxus or Mistogan. Otherwise, his tracking network would have been far more effective. Kanna pulled a card with some kind of special effect Rhodes couldn't quite make out. Then she drew another and held it up, northwest. That's the direction that'll bring us good luck. Rhodes nodded. Got it. Let's go. The two of them oriented themselves and chose a northwest path deeper into the canyon. Rhodes didn't summon any more monsters along the way to conserve magic power. He didn't want to risk running out in the middle of a real battle. The canyon terrain was filled with towering, jagged stone spires. Many areas were shadowed year-round, making them cold and damp. There wasn't much plant life, aside from patches of moss and ferns clinging to the cliff faces. Everything looked slick and treacherous underfoot. It wasn't a pleasant place to walk, and a chill sank into their bones. Rhodes stole a glance at Kanna. If Myra were here, maybe the mood would be warmer. Kanna noticed his glance. What is it? Did you sense something? Rhodes shook his head. Not yet. The area's huge. It'll take a while. The maze itself wasn't the problem. The real challenge was finding the keys. In this massive canyon, searching for a few wooden plaques was like looking for needles in a haystack. Suddenly, a figure flickered overhead. Kanna glanced up. Was that Mest just now? Yeah. He's probably scouting from above. Rhodes replied, then frowned. But can his magic really hold up if he keeps using space magic like that? If it doesn't, that just works out better for us. Kanna said with a shrug. Everyone's desperate to find the key. They're probably not managing their magic as carefully as you. They moved carefully through the stone maze. At every fork in the road, they let Kanna's divination decide which way to go. It wasn't about superstition. Her divination had proven reliable too many times to ignore. Looks like Mickey and Joey just signed in. Rhodes said as a message came in from one of the crabs he left near the entrance. One crab quietly began tailing the duo as they disappeared from view, keeping just out of sight. This was one of Rhodes' tactics. He had sent 2 scuttle crabs to tail the 2 groups. If he and Kanna couldn't find a key themselves, they could intercept the others at any time. I have a bad feeling your tracking plan might hit a snag. Kanna remarked. She might just head straight north and bulldoze her way through. Rhodes was silent for a moment, then nodded. That's possible. She and Joey have started climbing the mountain. Haha. Kana burst out laughing. That's just like her. Rhodes was starting to feel exhausted by the sheer recklessness of everyone in the guild. Male or female, it didn't matter, they were all hot-blooded and wild. Thankfully, Mickey didn't seem to be planning to scale the entire mountain. She just climbed high enough to get a good vantage point and released Little Bai to scout for an optimal route. Her strategy was simple: locate the exit first. If she found a key along the way, great. If not, she'd wait near the exit and challenge anyone who got there. Rhodes and Kana discussed it and easily deduced Mickey's plan. They couldn't help but look down on the idea. If she's not planning to look for the key herself, who are we supposed to steal it from? Rhodes muttered with exaggerated disappointment. Not long after, Warren and Max finally signed their names at the board and dashed into the maze. Another scuttle crab followed behind to keep tabs on them. Rhodes watched as Warren pressed his index and middle fingers together against his forehead, then instantly took off running, dragging Max along behind him. They're heading in Mickey's direction. Rhodes observed. So they don't plan to search for the keys themselves either? Kana shrugged. Warren's magic can track everyone's positions. For all we know, we might be under surveillance right now. Rhodes sighed. He had only managed to monitor 2 groups. And both of them had chosen the lazy route. As for Mest, his constant teleportation made tracking impossible. They'd have to rely on themselves for that one. After a while, Warren suddenly changed course. He pulled Max aside and darted down a new path at a fork in the canyon. The scuttle crab tried to tail them, but just as it rounded the bend, a sudden mound of sand surged up from the ground like a whip, slamming into it and knocking it over. Sand trap! Max shouted in surprise. Then he took a closer look. Wait a second, isn't that one of Rhodes' scuttle crabs? His summons are from this canyon? Warren shook his head. Nah, I'm more inclined to believe that Rhodes sent that crab to tail us. As expected, the crab, having been struck, vanished on its own, retreating back to the summoning realm. Rhodes had given it that instruction in advance to conserve magic and summon energy for more critical moments. Just as I thought. That really was his. Max watched the scuttle crab disappear and nodded. Hey, Warren. Hey, Rhodes. Sorry about that. A slightly cocky voice echoed in Rhodes' mind, sounded like Max. Huh? Max? Rhodes paused. Warren, is that you using telepathy? Kana also stopped in her tracks. Is Warren talking to you? Rhodes nodded, then heard Warren's voice come through clearly. Yeah, it's me. I can hear you if you speak like you just did. How's your progress? Rhodes replied. If we'd made any real progress, I wouldn't be tracking you, now would I? I had the crab stay hidden, but I guess you sniffed it out anyway. Tracking won't work on me. Warren said calmly. Warren was a seasoned wizard from the same generation as Lixus. With his specialty in telepathic and detection magic, trying to tail him without getting noticed was nearly impossible. Rhodes sighed internally. There really are a lot of monsters hiding in this guild. Kana looked confused. What are you two even talking about? He's asking how we're doing. Rhodes explained. Hang on. Warren, can you add Kana to the link too? I'm getting tired of relaying everything. No problem. Kana, can you hear me? Kana grinned. Loud and clear. Honestly, I'm more curious about how you two managed to get down from the cliff. Haha, well, you see, Warren. Funny how back on the train no one had much to say, but now that they couldn't see each other, the group was suddenly chatty. Rhodes was reminded of the good old days, when he and his friends would play team games from different places, shouting through voice chat and laughing through the chaos. Unfortunately, just when Max got to the good part, the conversation was cut off abruptly, likely because Warren, who had total control over the link, decided to shut it down. That psychic pooch pulls the plug like he's got admin rights to reality. But one thing was certain, Warren definitely didn't descend the cliff the normal way. Now Rhodes was even more curious. Chapter 166, Give the Guildmaster a Break. Rhodes asked. By the way, why'd you reach out to us? You picking a fight? Max just wanted to say hi. Oh, perfect. Let's have a chat then. Rhodes said casually. Kana and I are bored out of our minds. Hey, we're taking an exam, not going on a camping trip. Warren replied, exasperated. Well, we're just sitting around until we find the key or stumble across the exit. Rhodes smirked and revealed his evil plan. Besides, if I keep chatting with you, maybe I'll burn up some of your magic power. If we end up fighting, it'll be easier for us. Click. Warren cut the connection without a word. Kana burst out laughing. You really are terrible. But why say that out loud? It's just a little payback. I don't like being listened in on all the time. Rhodes said, crossing his arms. Isn't there some way to block that kind of detection? Besides keeping your distance, I'm not sure. Kana mused. But I heard that if someone's telepathy magic is stronger than his, they can invade or even hijack his communication. So it's like hacking a mental network. Rhodes thought. About 20 minutes later. Rhodes' eyes lit up just as Kana cried out. Found it. What? Rhodes asked. He'd just felt one of his merkwolves cancel its summon. His signal that the key had been secured and passed off. One of the beasts should be delivering it soon. I found it. Kana called from above. She leapt off a rock wall, springing into a hidden cave overhead. Moments later, she popped into view, holding up the oversized wooden key. It looked exactly like the one Makarov had shown them before. Double jackpot. Rhodes grinned. Should I take mine and sell it to Warren team? Kana chuckled, clearly in high spirits. Sure, I'll even haggle for you. Just give me half the cut for wine money. Rhodes rubbed his chin, mock tempted. Ugh, fine. Let's not give the old man any more headaches. He dismissed all of his summoned creatures except the scuttle crab, letting the key randomly drop somewhere. Let's see who gets lucky, he said. The two of them headed toward the finish line at a relaxed pace, scaling whatever obstacles got in their way instead of detouring. When they finally reached the 3 exit gates, they saw that one had already shut. Someone beat us here. Rhodes checked the vision from his remaining scuttle crab. Mickey and Joey still haven't found their key, he observed. But it looks like they're gearing up for a fight with Warren and Max. So that means Mest must have made it first. Probably thanks to Wachanzi, Kana said, referring to Mest's partner. Once his arms turn into those metal hounds, he can sniff things out like crazy. She glanced up at the sealed exit, still holding the oversized key in one hand. Wonder who they'll end up facing next. Let's leave them be for now. We should focus on recovering. Rhodes dismissed the crab that had been tailing Mickey and sat down on the cold stone floor, closing his eyes to quickly restore his magic energy. Yeah, good point. Kana settled down beside him, her thoughts drifting between the training they'd done over the past few days and the battle strategies they'd prepared for each group. The first stage had gone surprisingly well. Almost too well. Hopefully, that luck would carry over into the second. By the time Rhodes had fully recharged, 2 familiar figures emerged from the maze, Warren and Max. Warren had one of the massive fairy tale emblem-shaped keys tucked under his arm, while his other hand rested heavily on Max's shoulder for support. Both of them were scratched up and dirt-covered, looking like they'd rolled down half the canyon. Rhodes grinned. Wow, you two look like you got properly worked over. The 2 beat-up warriors didn't seem the least bit discouraged. Warren forced a smile, though it tugged at a cut near his mouth and made him flinch. Doesn't matter. We won. Can you even continue to the second round in that condition? Kana asked, sounding skeptical. Hanging around Rhodes for too long had clearly rubbed off on her. While she herself could still fight even with low magic power or an injury, she knew how important it was to weigh risk and judgment. But looking at Warren and Max, they were barely holding it together. We didn't come this far to turn back now, Warren said firmly. Exactly. Just need to hold out a little longer, and maybe we'll pull it off. Max grinned through a bruise, glancing at the other pair. So don't count us out just yet. I wouldn't dream of it. Rhodes replied with a nod. Then he tapped his chin and added with mock seriousness. Which is exactly why, maybe it's best to eliminate you now. Warren froze. Whoa. You've already got a key. No need to go all cutthroat now. I'm joking. Rhodes laughed. This is just my way of blowing off steam before round 2. Shall we head in? Yeah. Kana said, inhaling deeply. Just a little longer. She didn't know if she could handle another failure. But no, that wasn't the mindset she needed. This time, she would pass. With newfound resolve, she walked toward one of the 2 remaining exits, the massive key cradled in her arms. Before stepping through, she turned to glance at Rhodes, eyes seeking his reassurance. Rhodes gave a small nod. He and Kana had been staring at the 2 remaining exits for a while now, but there was no visible difference between them. At this point, all they could do was trust Kana's instincts. She had said her luck felt pretty good today. Kana raised the oversized fairy tale key, poised to insert it into one of the magic circles. But right before she committed, she paused, frowned slightly, and turned around. Without saying a word, she walked to the other exit and placed the key into its magic circle instead. The key dissolved into the glowing rune, and shimmering ripples, like light bending across water, spread out across the entrance. The 2 looked at each other, exchanged a nod of silent encouragement, and stepped through the portal together. Behind them, Warren and Max craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse inside, but the moment Rhodes and Kana vanished, large stones tumbled down from both sides of the canyon wall, sealing the entrance shut. I wonder who they'll run into. Max murmured. Want me to ask them with telepathy? Warren offered. He shook his head a second later. Forget it. If I interrupt the exam, Kana might actually kill me. A short silence passed. Then Max clapped his hands together and stood up. All right, break time's over. Let's keep going. Warren nodded. Yeah. We can't afford to fall too far behind. They approached the last remaining entrance. As they stepped through, the world beyond the stone shimmered with a warm crimson hue. When their vision cleared and armor came into focus, they both froze in place. Ursa? They stammered in unison. Among the three S-class wizards acting as examiners, Ursa Scarlet might not have been the strongest, though that was debatable, but she was definitely the most terrifying. Not because of her magic or strength, but because they'd been flattened by her too many times to count. If it were Lixus or Mustogan waiting inside, they might have at least tried to put up a brave front. But Ursa. Just seeing her made their knees go weak. Ursa greeted them with her signature, battle-ready smile. I've been waiting for you. Let me explain the rules, and then you'll fight me with the full intent to take me down. She drew one of her swords in a flash of light. I'll be on high alert. So don't expect me to hold back. Warren and Max instinctively clung to each other, voices trembling. New. Chapter 167, Kana and Rhodes vs. Lixus. The shimmering, water-like portal behind them was likely created by an illusion-type magic circle. Rhodes guessed it was probably Mustogan's work. But when he got a good look at the figure standing before them, it wasn't Mustogan at all. It was a tall man with short blonde hair and a heavy coat draped over his shoulders. Kana's eyes widened. Lixus. At least this time, the coat he wore actually suited the cold season. It's you too. Lixus scratched his head, looking completely uninterested. You sure took your sweet time getting here, Kana. And, who's this guy? Kana bristled. Lixus. Don't be a jerk. Huh? What did I say? Lixus raised an eyebrow, playing innocent. There are so many freeloaders in the guild. You expect me to remember every one of them? Rhodes chuckled under his breath. Wow. This guy could give Natsu a run for his money in the art of pissing people off. He was that kind of guy, the textbook arrogant, edgy type. Rhodes knew the best way to deal with someone like this wasn't to get mad, but to play it cool. He remembered what he'd told Kana days ago. S-class wizards are hard to beat in power, so we should look for flaws in their personalities. Ursa's too earnest, Mustogan hates revealing his identity, and Lixus. Well, he's ridiculously arrogant. So Rhodes just smiled and replied casually. Could you explain the rules, please? If it seems too hard, maybe we'll just give up and save you the trouble. Kana blinked in surprise. Rhodes was really keeping it together? She couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He was clearly doing this all for her. Lixus narrowed his eyes but looked mildly amused. Huh. At least you know how to behave. Fine. The old man asked me to run this test, so here's how it works. He pointed toward a flag lodged in the cliff wall. See that flag? Behind me is a magic circle. If one of you can grab the flag and step into the circle, you pass. Rhodes frowned. That was going to be tough. Behind Lixus was a narrow gorge, something like a natural stone corridor. One way in, one way out. It was the perfect place to bottleneck enemies. The flag itself was stuck in a rock wall about 10 meters off the ground. To get it and reach the circle, they'd have to rush through dozens of meters of tight space, while being under constant threat from Lixus's lightning speed attacks. This wasn't just a test of retrieval. It was practically a duel. Lixus smirked, clearly enjoying their silence. That's right. Unless you beat me, there's no way you're getting that flag. Rhodes stayed quiet. He wasn't about to admit it aloud, but if Mest was in this round, he could probably teleport straight to the goal in a flash. Now that he thought about it, maybe the master had given Mest a bit of an unfair advantage. Space magic was like cheat codes in a trial like this. But hey. Lixus continued, crackling with electricity. If you think you can take me down, huh? You think you two have what it takes? Come on, try me. Don't look down on us. Kana snapped, fanning out her magic cards with a fierce glare. Lixus sparked out a laugh. Let me warn you now, if you want to fight, I won't be holding back. Better to admit defeat before you get fried. Rhodes raised his hand calmly. Summon, raptors. Summon, Krugs. With a flash of magic, a flurry of large bird-like raptors and Krugs burst into view, 8 summoned beasts in total, forming up in front of Rhodes in tight formation. A flicker of surprise crossed Lixus's face. Oh? A swarm strategy? That's your play? How boring. Kana threw her entire deck of cards into the air. It's about time someone knocked that arrogance out of you. Golden glowing cards rained down like comets, but Lixus merely stepped aside, letting a dozen embed themselves harmlessly in the ground. Cracking his neck, he scoffed. All these years and you still haven't improved, Kana. Feather Fury. The raptors spread their wings wide, unleashing a volley of razor-sharp feathers while simultaneously charging forward in formation. Decent aim, but not nearly strong enough. With a swipe of his hand, Lexus released a burst of golden lightning. It arced out, incinerating the incoming feathers midair with ease. The charging raptors fared no better. Lexus slammed his fist into the largest, sending it flying, then kicked another clean off its path. Lightning surged from his boot through the creature and chained into the others, bringing down 3 more. Only one raptor remained, and it was making a beeline for the flag embedded high up on the canyon wall. Too predictable. Lexus smirked, his entire body bursting into light as he dashed forward like a golden thunderbolt. In an instant, he intercepted the bird and kicked it straight down from midair. "Now!" Kanna shouted. She flicked her wrist, launching 3 spell cards with deadly precision toward Lexus while he was airborne. Starlight burst. A blinding explosion of light detonated in midair, dazzling like a flash grenade. Fountain of prayer. A barrage of water blades shot forth, slicing through the haze to belt Lexus. Fated storm, thunder strike. A surge of lightning crackled from the final card, targeting the now-soaked Lexus with an electrified strike. From Kanna's perspective, this combo was airtight. Lexus wasn't a dragon's lair, after all. Using lightning magic against a lightning user might sound foolish, but in theory, catching him drenched could make it work. Honestly, for most mages, this kind of chain attack would have been game over. It was quick, layered, and devastating. Time to pop the victory champagne. But Lexus wasn't most mages. Seeing that, Rhodes sprang into action, summoning another squad of raptors for a ranged volley. He followed up with a group of merc wolves, 2 of them stacked atop each other, spinning like a drill as they lunged forward. Behind them, a larger 2-headed wolf charged with a wild, spiraling leap. Fang rush. Twin Fang Lancer. Take over. Raptor. Rhodes shouted as he leapt into the air, wings flaring wide. But Lexus, still alight with crackling magic, sneered in midair. "Seriously? You think that level of lightning works on me? Do you even know who you're fighting?" Lexus ripped off his soaked coat, lightning crackling wildly across his body. With a fierce surge of power, bolts of electricity shot out, disintegrating the barrage of feathers that had been launched at him. With a swift movement, Lexus drove his knee upward, striking the twin-headed wolf square inches one of its jaws. Electricity surged through its entire body, scorching its fur. The beast let out a pained howl before collapsing to the ground in a cloud of black smoke. Without missing a beat, Lexus brought both elbows down like thunderbolts, blasting 2 other regular wolves that leapt at him. Sparks flew, and the wolves dropped, charred and motionless. As his boots touched the earth once more, a flash of movement caught his eye. Rhodes, in his avian form, had already soared toward the cliffside and gripped the flagpole with his talons. With a hard tug, he yanked the flag free. Lexus narrowed his eyes, lightning crackling from his temples. "TCH. You little punk. You really think you can just ignore me?" he growled, his tone laced with irritation. "Nice one, Rhodes," called out Kanna cheerfully from behind. She flipped 2 cards into the air. Sun's explosion. Emperor's windblade. Enough of this. Lexus swung his right arm back, unleashing a torrent of blinding lightning. It collided with the explosion and slicing winds midair, swallowing them whole in a flash of raw power. The surge didn't stop there, it barreled forward, heading straight for Kanna. "Wah!" Kanna cried as the lightning struck her, sending her tumbling with a puff of smoke rising from her hair. Meanwhile, Rhodes, undeterred, dashed toward the magic circle ahead. But Lexus spun around and lunged after him, only to be stopped cold as a magic card beneath his foot snapped in two, activating its trap. Ice erupted from below, freezing his legs in place. Kanna, a bit singed but smiling through it, held up another card. Ice Pillar of Doom. The towering ice structure formed instantly, then shattered just as fast. In a burst of electricity, Lexus broke free and reformed midair as a bolt of lightning. He reappeared in front of Rhodes and slammed a kick into his abdomen. Rhodes was sent flying back, carving a long trail through the ground. But with a quick tumble, he flipped upright and landed beside Kanna again. The flag, however, was already clutched in Lexus's hand. He stabbed the pole into the dirt and glared at them, voice low and crackling with menace. "I said. Enough." Lightning surged across his entire body, flickering from his eyes and even sparking between his gritted teeth. He stood tall, surrounded by electric fury, looking every bit like a wrathful thunder god. Kanna rushed to Rhodes' side, her tone soft with concern. "You okay?" Rhodes exhaled and released his takeover magic, his talons fading away. "Yeah, sorry. I almost had it." Kanna gave a small smile, despite the static still buzzing in her hair. "I couldn't hold him off either. This guy's way tougher than I expected." Chapter 168, Take over, Blue Sentinel. Lexus raised his hand, and with a crackle of electricity, the wooden flagpole embedded itself unnaturally into the mountainside, purely by force of lightning. A glowing sphere of lightning sparked to life in his palm. With a sharp flick of his wrist, it elongated into a crackling whip that lashed out toward Rhodes and Kenna. Both of them leapt to opposite sides to dodge, but the group of summoned raptors wasn't as lucky. The lightning whip struck them midair, and with a flash, the magical beasts vanished in puffs of smoke. Lexus slammed both fists into the ground, and arcs of lightning slithered across the terrain like angry serpents. The bolts split into two, snaking toward his targets. Wah-ack! The lightning struck Rhodes and Kenna, lighting up their bodies as they screamed in unison. Sparks danced over Rhodes' body as he gritted his teeth and forced magic through his limbs to dull the impact, refusing to collapse. Even before regaining her balance, Kenna hurled two more cards forward. Sun's explosion. Emperor's Windblade. Flames and razor-sharp wind erupted from the cards, churning up dust and rushing toward Lexus in a chaotic storm of destruction. Engulfed in the attack, Lexus raised his arm to shield his face. He stormed forward, breaking through the flames and slicing wind like a force of nature. His violet shirt was torn, revealing his chiseled frame beneath, but he bore not a single wound. Kenna didn't let up. With nimble steps, she leapt backward, flinging golden glowing cards in all directions. Boom. 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 Each card exploded either on impact or midair, forcing Lexus to slow his advance. The ground shook from the chain of explosions. A few cards stuck to the rocky floor. Silent, waiting. Take over, Merc Wolf. With a sharp roar, Rhodes transformed into a fierce werewolf, fur bristling and eyes gleaming with primal power. He bounded forward and brought a clawed slash straight down toward Lexus's head. But Lexus caught his wrist with ease. Rhodes growled and slammed his other palm onto Lexus's chest. Summon, Merc Wolves. With a sudden shimmer of magic, 3 wolves materialized behind Lexus. 2 regular ones sank their fangs into his right arm and left side, while a large 2-headed wolf clamped down on his shoulders. Seeing her chance, Kenna darted forward, cards flicking between her fingers as she raced toward the flag. Lexus sneered. What a joke. A blast of lightning exploded from him, surging across his body. The summoned wolves yelped and vanished as if short-circuited. But Rhodes clenched his jaw and refused to let go, pressing his claws tighter around Lexus's wrist. With a howl, he launched a claw strike with his left hand. His claws raked across Lexus's chest, tearing away part of his shirt and revealing a black tattoo beneath it, along with a few fresh, red claw marks. But then, crack! Golden lightning struck Rhodes in the chest, surging through his body. Grrrehh. Rhodes howled, stumbling back several steps. He dropped to a half-crouch, clutching his chest, coughing hard. Cough. Cough. Thankfully, no blood, but his wolf fur had puffed up from the shock, making the once ferocious werewolf look awkwardly fluffy. Lexus didn't even glance at Rhodes. He turned to pursue Kenna, but another card at his feet detonated in a thick puff of gray smoke. Fool's smoke. Kenna said with a smirk. Lexus immediately covered his mouth and nose. The smoke wasn't just for show, it had a subtle, hypnotic quality. As he made to push through it, 2 more cards exploded beside him. Suddenly, the world twisted. A monstrous demon with horns and claws loomed in front of him, maw wide open, ready to devour him. Magician's illusion. Demon's intimidation. Lexus's expression didn't even flinch. These tricks might work on amateurs. He muttered, lightning sparking in his eyes. But I'm not one of them. Still, despite shrugging off the illusion, he knew one thing for sure. Even with his strength, that smoke was crawling with traps. Lexus leapt high, soaring above the smoke in one clean jump. As the haze cleared from his view, he spotted Kenna scrambling up the rocky cliff face, the flagpole in her grasp. At the same moment, Rhodes had flanked to the opposite side of the smoke. With a sharp motion, he raised his hand, and a wolf launched through the air, sinking its fangs into Lexus's ankle. You little. Lexus growled, sparks flashing from his leg. Rhodes grinned beneath his lupine snout and slashed his right hand downward. Drag him down. The merc wolf tugged violently, and Lexus was yanked down midair, landing in a rough half-crouch. Snarling, he slammed a fist into the shadow beast, dispersing it in a flash of smoke. He stood up at the edge of the smoke field, lightning crackling in his palm. With a flick, he hurled a bolt straight at Rhodes. Rhodes dodged, but as he moved, Lexus lifted his right hand again. A crackling orb of lightning the size of a small human formed, arcs of electricity dancing around it like a living creature. He hurled it with force, the ball tethered to him by a whip of lightning. Lightning pressure bomb. Grah! Rhodes cried out in agony as the massive bolt struck him dead on. The sheer force dwarfed anything Lexus had thrown before. His fur was nearly scorched off, his body sparking and steaming as he crashed onto his back. With another sharp wave, Lixus swung the tethered lightning ball toward Kanna. Kanna had just yanked the flag free from the rock wall and was mid-jump down when Rhodes' scream made her freeze midair. She turned, panic in her voice. Rhodes. Rhodes, barely conscious, lifted a shaky thumb and rasped. Go. Finish it. Whether she heard him or not, Kanna clenched her teeth and took off running with the flag. But lightning was faster than any runner. Defense wall. She shouted, throwing a glowing card behind her as she sprinted. A shimmering barrier flickered into place. Thin, but better than nothing. The moment the lightning struck it, the barrier shattered with a crackle. A stone beetle-like creature burst from the mountain wall in an attempt to intercept, but it was too late. The lightning ball slammed into Kanna's back, and she screamed as her body was engulfed in electric current. Her eyes nearly rolled back, and she collapsed, the flag slipping from her fingers. It clattered to the ground, the tip landing just shy of the glowing edge of the magic circle. Just a little further. Kanna whispered, trembling as she pushed herself up on her elbows, refusing to give in. Dust clung to her skin, and her long dark hair fell over her face, tangled and dirt-streaked. Just a little more. Kanna's voice trembled as she struggled to lift her head. The flagpole was within reach, so close. If she couldn't walk, she'd crawl. But instead of the finish line, what appeared before her was Lixus's boot. Without hesitation, Lixus raised his leg and delivered a merciless kick, sending her flying out of the narrow passage. Kanna. Rhodes had already reverted from his werewolf form. He sprinted forward and caught her just in time, gently lowering her to the ground. Kanna? Hey. Kanna. Rhodes called, lightly patting her cheek. Can you hear me? Her long lashes fluttered, and her eyes cracked open. Tears welled up in them almost instantly. She bit her lip, trembling as she reached out and clutched a handful of his sleeve with her fingers. Her voice was hoarse. I was so close. It's okay. Rhodes whispered, forcing a calm he didn't feel. It's not over. We've still got one last shot. With effort, he helped her to her feet. She leaned on him for support as they limped toward the tunnel entrance, shoulder to shoulder. At the far end, Lixus stood tall and unmoving, arms crossed, guarding the magic circle like a thunder god. He gave the fallen flagpole a lazy kick, sending it clattering across the stone floor. He raised an eyebrow and sneered. You two still haven't figured it out yet? Time to give up. Rhodes met his gaze, unflinching. Lixus. In that moment earlier, there were plenty of ways to stop Kanna. You didn't have to kick her like that. Huh? What are you, her babysitter now? Lixus scoffed. Do you even know what this S-class exam is? This isn't some friendly spar. This is a battlefield. He turned his gaze to Kanna. And you, Kanna. You've taken this exam more than once, haven't you? So why are you still here, scraping the bottom of the barrel? You still don't know your limits. His tone turned harsh. Weaklings like you aren't fit to carry the same title as me. Kanna's eyes burned with defiance. I'm not giving up. Not now. Lixus snorted. Oh? Even after all the magic you wasted on traps and flashy spells? You took my lightning head-on and now you can barely stand. What's the plan? Gonna throw your lot in with him? He jerked his chin at Rhodes. That half-baked summoning magic and second-rate takeover magic? Please. Don't make me laugh. To Lixus, they weren't a threat anymore. The fact that they'd lasted this long was already a miracle. Probably thanks to cheap tricks and lucky timing. But in terms of real strength? They were miles behind. A sudden rumble interrupted his thoughts. A crowd burst from the mountain wall again, determined to protect Kanna. Lixus didn't even blink. A bolt of lightning exploded from his palm and split the creature clean in two. With a smirk, he stretched out a hand and beckoned with one finger. Come on. Let's see what else you've got left. Rhodes gently moved Kanna behind him and stood tall. Then let me show you my final move. He raised one arm horizontally, his voice calm but resolute. Take over, Blue Sentinel. Chapter 169, Second Stage. Past Rhodes' body surged upward, his frame expanding until he stood over 3 meters tall. His arms, legs, head, his entire form turned to gleaming, rune-etched stone. The joints still moved like a human's, but his forearms and thighs were inscribed with ancient-looking symbols, and a glowing sapphire gem pulsed steadily in the center of his chest. From a distance, he resembled some kind of enchanted stone giant. Like a magical suit of armor designed to smash through mountains. Boom. Boom. With each step he took, the ground trembled beneath his heavy feet. Magic swirled around him, dense and undeniable. Rhodes raised one enormous fist and punched to the side. Crack. The mountain wall shook violently, splintering under the force. A large crack spread outward, and rocks of every size came tumbling down. Oh? Lixus grinned, interest sparking in his eyes. That's more like it. Rhodes rumbled forward, his voice echoing with stone and magic. "Let's see you talk tough after you eat this." His fist, roughly the size of a dinner pot, came crashing down toward Lixus's head. But Lixus, ever proud, didn't dodge. He met the blow head-on, punching upward with a lightning-coated fist. A shockwave exploded outward, spiderweb cracks splitting the ground around them. Lixus tipped slightly, knees buckling under the weight, but he bounced back up with a grin. Not bad. But, in the blink of an eye, his figure vanished from beneath the golem's fist. Bam! A sudden kick struck Rhodes in the chest, forcing him to stumble back several steps. Before he could react, another hard blow landed on his back. "You're too slow." Lixus taunted, weaving through Rhodes' attempted counterpunch like a streak of lightning. He zipped around him, landing rapid strikes all over Rhodes' rocky form. Arms, legs, sides, testing for weak points. But Rhodes barely felt it. Lixus' attacks, though lightning fast, lacked the power to pierce the reinforced defense of the blue sentinel form. The punches and kicks bounced off harmlessly, as if he were hitting a wall of solid granite. Lixus clearly noticed. He leapt back and raised a clenched fist, electricity gathering like a brewing storm. "You're not getting through with just a fancy turtle shell," he roared. "I'll tear it down." Summon. The thunder that roars through the skies, the lightning that falls from the heavens. Lightning swirled around him, growing fiercer with each second. The air grew tense. Chanting? Rhodes' eyes lit up. He loved opponents who stood still to charge up. He raised his stone arm. Blue cannon. Chunks of stone jutted from the surrounding mountain wall, forming twin protrusions. Blue energy lit up between them before they detached, transforming into two small floating golems, each with a glowing gem in its core. "Fire!" Rhodes shouted. The many golems blasted twin beams of blue energy toward Lixus. With no time to finish his chant, Lixus had to leap aside to dodge. The light waves struck the ground where he stood, blasting out small craters. At the center of each bit was a deeper bar hole that pierced straight through the rock, proof of the spell's serious penetration power. "TCH. What are these things?" Lixus growled, retaliating with two bolts of lightning that struck the floating cannons, reducing them to rubble midair. But even before the dust settled, two more golems emerged from the rock wall. Rhodes smirked. "You can blast them all you want. I can summon more." Lixus narrowed his eyes. "A magic like Bixlow's?" He filed the thought away. "Then I'll just break you instead. Come, try it." Rhodes laughed. His excitement was palpable. He commanded the floating golems to open fire, wave after wave of blue energy raining down toward Lixus. The cave echoed with blast after blast. Lixus weaved and jumped with fluid precision, dodging shot after shot. The moment he closed the distance, he raised his hand and unleashed another set of lightning bolts, shooting down the floating cannons once again. Before Rhodes could summon another floating cannon, Lixus surged forward with lightning crackling through his arm. He swung his fist, now wreathed in blinding electricity. Rhodes met the attack with a punch of his own. But in a flash, Lixus's fist expanded, transforming into a massive, thunder-charged gauntlet, even larger than Rhodes' own stone fist. Boom! The clash shook the mountain. Lightning burst outward like a storm unleashed, scattering stone and debris in every direction. The very ground cracked beneath them, and the mountain walls on either side shuddered violently, as if the world itself was breaking apart. For just a moment, Rhodes could have sworn he saw the image of knots roaring with fire, superimposed over Lixus. That same raw, overwhelming force. And then, the stone arm of the blue sentinel shattered. Followed by his shoulder. Then his chest. His helmet. The entire armor cracked apart like a crumbling statue, and Rhodes was launched backward by the explosive force. He flew clean out of the narrow passage, skidding along the ground like a ragdoll before finally coming to a halt. His magic power spent, the takeover magic forcibly cancelled itself, and Rhodes returned to his normal form. He couldn't even sit up. Lying flat on his back, staring up at the sky, he caught his breath. His entire body ached, but his spirit felt oddly light. How long had he lasted against a fully serious Lixus? A minute? Maybe less? He chuckled. "Haha, I lost. You got me good." Lixus, who had just lowered his fists and was about to reply, suddenly turned his head. A golden light shot into the sky, bursting into a dazzling firework. "Lixus." A familiar voice called. At the center of the magic circle stood Kenna, leaning proudly on the flagpole. The two krugs beside her flickered and disappeared in a shimmer of magic. She grinned and waved, calling out cheerfully. "We passed." "What?" Lixus blinked. He suddenly remembered the stone beetle-like creatures he'd blasted earlier, the one that had tried to shield Kenna. Now that he thought about it, it looked exactly like the two that had just vanished. Kenna tilted her head with a teasing smile. "Yup. Those were the same ones. While you were too busy playing with Rhodes, They used earth magic to tunnel me straight here. Her voice was strong and steady, no trace of the exhaustion or pain from earlier. Truthfully, her magic reserves had been dangerously low during the battle. But thanks to Rhodes' intervention, she'd had enough time to recover a good portion of it. And those injuries? Well, let's just say it was 60% real and 40% acting. As for all the crying, shouting, and stubborn defiance. Yeah. That was mostly acting too. But the tears were real. Kana had been too immersed in the role, too drawn into the moment. The pain of failure from her past resurfaced before she could stop it. She hadn't meant to cry, but once the memories came flooding back, the emotions overwhelmed her. She wanted this. She'd always wanted this. As for the final move that Rhodes had declared earlier, it wasn't some hidden magical trump card. It was strategy. Showing just enough power to keep Lixus interested, while secretly sending Kana toward the magic circle. All the flashy attacks, the desperate stand, it was never about beating Lixus. The goal from the start was the flag. Oh, and that extra Krug hidden underground? That was Plan C. Meant to delay Lixus even more if needed. But it vanished when Rhodes lost the strength to maintain his takeover spell. In the end, it was all about using Lixus's own arrogance against him, pretending to be beaten, drawing his focus, holding him just long enough for Kana to slip past. Rhodes finally managed to sit up, swaying slightly, and offered a faint smile as he muttered. Sorry. It was too hard to find your weakness. So. This was the only way to win. He couldn't help but worry. Lixus wasn't exactly known for taking tricks lightly. The last thing he wanted was a lightning-wielding S-class wizard flying into a full-blown tantrum. Sure enough, Lixus realized what had happened, and his temper exploded. Why, you tricked me? You were playing me like a fool? ZZT. Lightning crackled furiously around him. Hey, Lixus. Kana waved frantically from inside the magic circle. We passed the test, remember? I don't agree. He shouted, furious. That's enough, Lixus. A firm voice echoed across the clearing. Master Makarov approached, walking calmly with his hands behind his back. Beside him was Urza, her scarlet hair flowing like a banner in the wind. The electric pressure in the air eased slightly as Lixus glanced at them, though sparks still leapt from his shoulders. Old man, I was the examiner here. He barked. And I don't accept this cowardly way of passing. If you're the examiner, Makarov said sternly, then fairness is your responsibility. He stood tall, small in stature but towering in presence. Magic, intelligence, courage, teamwork, these are all signs of strength. There's no right way to pass. And certainly no shame in tactics. His voice boomed with finality. Kana and Rhodes accomplished the goal in spite of your interference. That's not cowardice. That's skill. Urza stepped forward, her armor clinking as she gently helped Rhodes to his feet. I saw part of your fight. She said with a warm smile. You were amazing. You're stronger than you think, Rhodes. Thanks. He murmured, leaning into her support. Her armor might have been cold and heavy, but the kindness of his guildmate made it feel warm. We passed. Kana shouted with joy, dropping the flag as she sprinted over and threw her arms around Rhodes, then pulled Urza into the hug too. Caught off guard, Urza still returned it, wrapping her arms around both of them. Congratulations. Thud. Thud. Kana yelped with a giggle. Ow, Urza, you're hugging too hard. Rhodes didn't even have the strength to complain. His brain was still buzzing. Behind them, Lixus and Makarov continued to argue quietly. The tension hadn't completely faded. After a brief exchange of harsh words, Lixus finally turned away, scowling. Don't make me do something this boring again. He muttered before disappearing into the woods, lightning trailing behind him. Chapter 170, The Mountain. Collapsed Urza glanced toward the distance, her brows furrowed in concern. Master, Lixus. It's all right. Makarov said with a small shake of his head. I'll speak with him later. Then, turning to Rhodes and Kana, he smiled gently. But first, congratulations on passing the second stage of the exam. Master. Kana stepped forward, her excitement now dimmed by exhaustion. What's the next stage? She sounded worried now, and for good reason. If the next challenge was as brutal as facing Lixus, there was no way she and Rhodes could handle it in their current state. Makarov let out a warm chuckle. Don't fret just yet. Go rest at the camp first. After everything they'd been through, a bit of rest before the third trial was more than deserved. The two nodded and followed Makarov toward the camp. Kana was tired but still able to walk on her own. Rhodes, however, could barely stay upright and had to lean heavily on Urza, who offered silent support with her usual calm strength. By the way, what about the other teams? Boom. A massive tremor cut Rhodes off mid-sentence. The ground rumbled beneath their feet, and before he could even turn around, Mirza had scooped him up Brial style, grabbed Kana by the arm, and dashed after Makarov to safety with impressive speed. When Mirza finally set him down, Rhodes turned his head just in time to witness the full collapse of the mountain wall. The very wall he had cracked with his punch. The fracture had deepened. Now, a web of cracks stretched from the shattered cliff across the ground, connecting with the crater left by Lixus's lightning stop, and spread all the way to the opposite mountainside. The towering rock formation that had once stood proudly as a natural arch, one of the island's scenic wonders, crumbled into a heap of jagged stone. It was now a very unimpressive rocky hill. Makarov's mouth hung open. His expression was one of pure disbelief, like he was watching a slow-motion disaster unfold. I could have sworn this examination site was reinforced with earth magic before the test. He muttered. Mirza crossed her arms thoughtfully. It probably started when Rhodes summoned beasts began tunneling through the cliffs and underground. Then came the floating cannon spell, which drew rock from inside the mountain. Add in that punch to the wall and the collateral damage from Lixus's lightning. She tilted her head slightly. All of that likely triggered a chain reaction that destabilized the enchantments holding the mountain together. Rhodes chuckled awkwardly. So, do I have to pay for this? It was technically part of his strategy, creating that crack to block Lixus's line of sight, but he hadn't meant to pulverize a whole mountain range. Makarov sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. No compensation necessary. But, since this happened near the railway, I'll probably have to write a formal apology. He let out a nervous laugh, patting Rhodes on the back. At least I chose a site several kilometers north of the tracks. If we'd been closer. Hoo boy. Luckily, the train route hadn't been affected. That alone was enough to be grateful for. Makarov muttered under his breath. Next year, we're holding the S-class exam on our own land. If something gets destroyed, well, at least we won't owe anyone a letter. And surely, the kids would be a bit more careful on their own turf next year. Right? Makarov rubbed his forehead, sighing. Rhodes was usually a well-behaved and sensible one. Surely he wouldn't, right? The master let out a slow breath, silently praying Rhodes wouldn't get led astray by a few of the guild's more creative troublemakers. Meanwhile, Rhodes glanced at the master curiously. Did rubbing your forehead like that actually wear out your hairline? Being the head of a guild filled with eccentric lunatics probably wasn't great for hair preservation. Yeah. Being guild master definitely wasn't easy. The temporary camp for the S-class exam was set up in a small clearing just a short distance from the testing area. It was modest, with a large tent pitched in the center, surrounded by a couple of warm fires flickering merrily. Inside the tent, Warren and Max lay sprawled out like battle-worn veterans. Outside, Mickey, Joey, and of all people, Wachansey were busy prepping a meal. From the thick bandages wrapped around Mickey and Joey's arms, and the soothing ointment plastered on their foreheads, it looked like Warren and Max hadn't been the only ones caught in the crossfire of something intense. Nearby, a makeshift chopping board had been propped up on crates. An assortment of pots and ingredients were laid out, courtesy of what Rhodes strongly suspected was Riz's personal supply. After all, he'd definitely seen her wheeling in a suspiciously massive luggage cart back at the guild. Kanda glanced around, taking a quick head count. Hey. Where our Mest and? Wait, wasn't Miss Togan one of the examiners? Miss Togan had urgent business and left early. Makarov explained casually. As for Mest, he said he wanted to explore a little and would return on his own. The master chuckled to himself. He knew perfectly well that sneaky Mest was trying to investigate Fairy Tale's so-called secrets again. But as long as he didn't interfere with the exam, Makarov let him be. Just then, Mirza suddenly clapped her hands. Cooking? I want to help, she declared with sparkling eyes, then promptly shoved Rhodes toward Kenna. Here, hold him, I'm changing. Don't change. Warren and Max bolted upright from inside the tent, shouting in panic. We surrender. We surrender. Kenna giggled as she caught Rhodes and helped him sit down. Let me guess, you two ran into Riz. Warren slumped back down with a haunted look. Yeah, it was terrifying. Max lifted an arm wrapped in bandages and pointed to both himself and Warren. She thrashed us. Gave us the full Titania experience. I can see that. Rhodes chuckled and leaned back with a groan. So, Mest and Wachansey met Miss Togan? Did they pass? Max, now wide awake and full of gossip, snorted. Not even close. They were out before the test even started. Out? Yup. Fell asleep during the intro briefing. Miss Togan just looked at them, sighed, and transported them straight to camp. Seriously. They didn't even get a chance to fight for a flag. And with teleportation magic, no less. How do they mess that up? Rhodes had his suspicions about Miss Togan. He quietly leaned toward Kanna and muttered. You don't think Miss Togan plays fair, do you? I mean, what if he hypnotized everyone right after explaining the rules? Or maybe he just used illusion magic to conjure up a fake flag or something? Kana glanced at him, eyes wide. Now that you mention it, thank goodness we didn't run into him. They both exchanged a solemn look, one of deep relief. If Miss Hogan had been their examiner, they might have lost without even realizing how they lost. Haha. When you put it that way, maybe we didn't do so badly after all. Warren said cheerfully. At least we fought Rosa for a few rounds. Getting thrashed still counted as participation, right? Rhodes replied with a smirk. Yeah, but at least Miss Hogan walked away unscathed. Warren immediately sat up, offended. Oh come on. You got beaten to a pulp by Lixus, and you're throwing shade at us? But we passed. Rhodes replied matter-of-factly. You. Warren clutched his head in defeat. I still think Lixus went easy on you. Why did we have to get the one examiner who doesn't know the meaning of mercy? From the cooking area, Ursa, who was happily stirring a pot with one hand and gripping a very sharp kitchen knife with the other, turned around with a bright smile and gave Warren a thumbs up. You've still got a long way to go. Warren immediately collapsed back into the tent. I'm tired. I'm not coming next year, unless I've gotten way stronger. Rhodes laughed, joining in the banter. As the conversation continued, he realized something. His body didn't feel quite as tired anymore. The warmth of friends and laughter was its own kind of healing. After a while, Kana, quiet until now, suddenly looked at him and spoke. Thank you, Rhodes. He blinked. Huh? He gave her a wry smile. Don't thank me too much. I probably won't be of much help in the next round. Sorry. His summons, the 3 Merkwolves and 6 Raptors had already been defeated and hadn't respawned yet. His own magic reserves were running dangerously low. It was unclear how much he'd recover before the 3rd stage of the exam. If it's something like a search mission, maybe I can get a Merkwolf to help sniff things out. He added. But if it's a fight, I might be dead weight. Kata gently shook her head. Don't say that. No one could have done better than you today. I'll carry the next round if I have to. Just then, the smell of food began wafting through the camp, warm and inviting. Mirza cheerfully waved her ladle in the air. Everyone. Food's ready, come eat. Chapter 171, the 3rd test. Mirza and Mickey's cooking skills turned out to be surprisingly impressive. There was something magical about sipping hot soup on a chilly day like this. It warmed the body and soul. Rhodes couldn't help but be amazed. These 2 strong, battle-hardened women were actually great cooks? Do powerful women like them secretly practice cooking at home just to blow everyone away with their skills later? Of course, Myra's cooking still held the crown. That was undisputed. Everyone sat around the campfire, bowls in hand, enjoying the warmth and laughter as they listened to the masters share stories from the past. Mostly, Mikra used the time to reflect on the shortcomings each candidate had revealed during the exam and encouraged everyone to keep striving for next year. After lunch, Warren and Max had more or less recovered. They packed their things and headed back with the rest of the examinees who hadn't made it past the 2nd stage. Only Makarov, Ursa, Kana, and Rhodes remained at the campsite. Makarov took a deep breath before speaking about the final phase of the exam. To be honest, given your current condition, I wouldn't recommend proceeding to the 3rd stage. Kana opened her mouth to insist she was fine, but when she thought about Rhodes' state, she hesitated. This was her exam, yes. But without Rhodes' help, she wouldn't have made it this far. She looked at him and said, What do you think? Rhodes paused, then said, Why don't we at least hear what the task is? Better to understand what we're up against before making a decision. No point in quitting blindly. Makarov exchanged a glance with Mirza. Mirza pulled out a mission scroll and read. The 3rd test is a real mission. Track down a juvenile unicorn beast hiding nearby and eliminate it. A unicorn? Kana's eyes widened in shock. Isn't that classed as an S-class monster? If it were a fully grown adult, yes. Makarov explained. Unicorn beasts in adulthood are capable of causing tremors, collapsing mountains, and destroying entire mineral veins. They pose a huge threat to nearby towns and villages. But this one, Mirza added firmly, is still a juvenile. It's weaker and hasn't yet developed its full strength. Still, it must be stopped before it matures. That is your final mission. Rhodes frowned in thought. Beasts take time to grow. Can't we rest a day or 2 before continuing? Makarov shook his head. No. The deadline is sunset today. Even in its juvenile state, the unicorn is dangerous. Especially at night, when it's at its most active. If you don't complete the task before dark, the mission will fall to Ursa. Rhodes glanced at Kana, who looked uncertain. We'll rest for a little while and then give it a shot, he suggested. Kana hesitated. But your injuries. If we don't even try, we'll regret it later. Rhodes said, managing a grin. Worst case scenario, you take the lead, and I'll stay out of the way. He figured it would be a waste to come this far, with the support of both Makarov and Ursa, and not even attempt the final challenge. Kanna's eyes softened, touched by his resolve. She nodded firmly. All right. Let's do it. During the break, Rhodes took the opportunity to chat with Master Mikhail and Ursa, hoping to gather more information about the unicorn beast. He figured once this was all over, he should probably sign up for a class like Rare Magical Beast Illustrated Studies. He had never even heard of a unicorn-type monster before, let alone knew what it looked like. I could draw it for you, Ursa offered, pulling a pen and a sketchpad out of her bag without hesitation. Rhodes blinked. Wait, you carry a sketchbook around with you? You draw? Of course, Ursa said matter-of-factly. A sketchbook is essential. You never know when inspiration will strike for a new armor design. She spoke with such sincerity that Rhodes didn't dare doubt her. I use it so often that I've gotten pretty confident in my drawing skills. She added proudly. Here, I'll draw the unicorn for you now. Kanna, watching this unfold, had a somewhat complicated expression on her face. This was Rhodes's first time seeing Ursa draw, and admittedly, he was a little excited. Ursa always gave off such a capable, battle-hardened vibe. Seeing her do something like sketching was oddly refreshing. The unicorn's most distinct feature is, of course, the horn. Ursa explained as she sketched. Then there are its powerful hind legs and thick tail. The musculature is very different from that of a human. And don't forget the claws. The curvature is quite unique. She narrated seriously as her pen moved across the page. One could tell she was genuinely passionate about it. A few minutes later, she turned the sketchpad around and proudly held it up. All done. What do you think? Well, how should I put this? Rhodes carefully chose his words. It's amazing. You really captured all the features you just described. He meant it, but unfortunately, those were the only things she had captured. Ursa, however, remained modest. Oh, I'm still not that good. I've got a long way to go before I can match Ritas. Ritas? You're aiming to compete with Ritas? Rhodes was honestly speechless. This was Ursa's artistic benchmark? Well, he had to admire her ambition. Right. Keep up the good work. He encouraged with a polite smile. Truth be told, Myra's drawing skills weren't much better. Back when she was explaining celestial spirit magic to him, she'd also shown off her art. Thanks to that, before Rhodes had even grasped what celestial spirits actually were, he'd been convinced they were some kind of bizarre monsters from a horror story. And now, seeing Ursa's drawing prowess, he could only conclude, those two were a perfect match in more ways than one. Kanna gave Rhodes a thumbs up. It was incredible how well he handled that situation without breaking a sweat. Although Ursa's drawing was a little abstract, her knowledge was solid. At the very least, she managed to clearly describe the unicorn's defining traits. She also shared that the unicorn beast liked to hide in mountainous caves, sometimes natural, sometimes ones it dug out itself. As for its magic affinity, it was clearly earth-based, and its defense capabilities were known to be quite high. If someone were to accept a mission like this through the guild, most of what Ursa shared could be easily looked up in the request details. So technically, she wasn't giving away any unfair advantages. As the sun inched westward, Rhodes had recovered some of his magic and stamina. He summoned a scuttle crab and called out to Kanna to begin their search. Time was running out. They needed to locate the unicorn quickly. Any battle planning would have to be figured out along the way. Riding on the back of the crab, Rhodes could still take it easy and continue resting. Maintaining just one summon at a time wasn't much of a burden anymore, and the crab's 360-degree field of vision was far more convenient than constantly turning his head to check their surroundings. Should we split up and cover more ground? Kanna suggested. Searching together is just too slow. The canyon's massive. We'll never finish before sunset if we keep moving like this. Rhodes instinctively hesitated. Splitting up could be dangerous. But then he remembered, Master Mikhail and Ursa were each shadowing one of them. With that kind of backup, they'd be fine. He nodded. All right. How do we stay in touch? Kanna pulled out 2 enchanted cards and handed one to Rhodes. The moment he took it, a chibi version of Kanna popped up on the surface of the card, waving her arms. Likewise, Kanna's card showed a tiny, animated version of Rhodes. These are linked communication cards, she explained, giving him a quick demo. The mini Kanna on Rhodes' card flailed dramatically while shouting help me, and simultaneously, the card pointed toward Kanna's current location like a compass. Rhodes raised an eyebrow, impressed. Is this like Warren's magic? You really do everything, huh? Kanna shook her head. No, it's not as advanced. These just send out a basic distress call and show the direction of the card holder. It's nowhere near as convenient as Warren's telepathy. Still, it was clever. A specialized version of communication magic, optimized for rescue scenarios, and most importantly, with tracking included. Kanna's skills really were incredibly broad. Rhodes thought that, given more time and experience, she could grow into the role of one of those dependable wise old mages who always seem to know everything. It wasn't easy learning so many different types of magic and being decent at all of them. Chapter 172, The Beast That Shakes the Earth? Rhodes found searching for the unicorn to be incredibly dull, especially since none of his 3 merkwolves or 6 raptors had turned up anything useful. It looked like he was going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Still, he figured this was just another part of the test. Once he understood the kind of terrain unicorn beasts preferred, tracking down their cave became a lot simpler. He examined each suspicious-looking cliffside with growing curiosity, a wild idea forming in his head. What if I sent out the Krugs to burrow into every hill and knock them all down? Would the unicorn just pop out on its own? Kind of like when someone blasted open a sealed tomb and ended up releasing ancient curses and sand-wraiths. Classic rookie move. It might actually be more efficient, and would definitely save time searching through every nook and cranny. Rhodes seriously considered it, until he imagined Master Mikhail seeing the aftermath and bursting into tears. Yeah. Better keep that as a last resort. Suddenly. Help me. Help me. The card in Rhodes' pocket lit up and shouted in Kanna's chibi voice. This way. He commanded. The scuttle crab sprinted forward at full speed. Within minutes, Rhodes reached Kanna's position. You found it? SHH. Kanna yanked him behind a nearby boulder and pressed a finger to her lips, then pointed toward a shadowy cave in the distance. Rhodes perked up his ears. From the cave came a low, rhythmic wheezing. Like someone snoring. It's asleep. Kanna whispered. That sound is definitely the unicorn. What's the plan? Rhodes lowered his voice too. Sneak attack, of course. If we don't hit it while it's out cold, are we even fairy tale mages? Kanna frowned. The entrance doesn't line up with where it's sleeping. I can't throw my cards directly inside. She had considered launching a full barrage of offensive spells at once. But if she startled the beast before the first one landed, it could all backfire. So we'll have to set traps and lure it out. She pointed to a few marked spots near the mouth of the cave. What do you think of this setup? Rhodes examined her plan and nodded. Looks good. Leave the baiting to me. But this time, we're not built for a long fight. We hit it with everything we've got from the start and try to end it fast. Got it. Kanna replied, her tone turning serious. She pulled out all her remaining cards and began pairing them, carefully selecting combinations for maximum impact. Then, with practiced ease, she flicked them into position, each one landing exactly where it needed to be. Rhodes had originally planned to send in the scuttle crab to flush the beast out, but suddenly, he had a better idea. Summon, Gromp. 2 massive swamp toads, each nearly a meter tall, materialized before him. Their throats bulged, ready to croak, but don't make a sound. Rhodes warned quickly. The frogs froze mid-croak, their throats puffed out like balloons but perfectly silent. Rhodes glanced at their webbed feet. No extra venom dripping. Good. You too. He said in a low voice, pointing toward the cave. Sneak in quietly. When you spot the big guy, aim for the eyes, the mouth, and the nose. Hit it with everything you've got. Then run. Fast. When you reach this point, spit again and retreat. Got it? Nod if you understand. No, don't croak. Just go. The 2 summoned grumps turned around, gave a soft hop, and landed quietly at the mouth of the cave. Following Rhodes's instructions, they silently crawled into the shadows ahead. Using poison? Great idea. Kanna huffed, clearly still annoyed by Lixus's earlier attitude. You should have used that trick on Lixus too. There's an antidote anyway. Rhodes shook his head, amused. Come on. If Granny Poorly Uzuka ever found out I poisoned a guildmate just because I could cure him afterward, she'd chase me out of the guild with a broom. Annoying as Lixus could be, he was still family. Croc croc roar. The croaking of frogs and a bestial roar echoed from within the cave. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. Wait, can it really cause an earthquake even as a juvenile? Rhodes narrowed his eyes. The tremors weren't strong, so he couldn't tell if they were from a special ability or just the creature's heavy footsteps. Moments later, only one Gromp emerged from the darkness, stumbling into position as it had been ordered. The other had already been forcefully unsummoned, likely trampled or struck by the unicorn beast inside. Croc the surviving Gromp croaked once, settling into place, ready to bait the monster toward the trap. Boom. 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 The ground thudded rhythmically as the beast approached. Finally, a towering unicorn monster burst out from the cave, its single horn gleaming and a smear of purplish venom streaking its face from the earlier ambush. Rhodes squinted at the creature. The longer he looked, the more it resembled a monster from an old fantasy show he once saw. It looked a lot like Gulls in the Earthshaker, just a little smaller. This unicorn wasn't the size of Mikhail's Titan magic, but it still towered over Rhodes's own summoned Krugs and Bramblerbacks. It stood a solid 6 or 7 meters tall. Roar. Whether it was roaring in rage or pain wasn't clear. Either way, it was loud. The grump didn't flinch. It took one step forward and spat another burst of venom squarely at the beast's face. That did it. With a furious snarl, the unicorn monster lumbered forward, straight toward the trap zone. Kana was already prepared. Tower's restraint. Fountain of fools. Fountain of prayer. Thunder of fate. Pillars of stone erupted around the unicorn, boxing it in. Mist sprayed up in a cloud, obscuring its vision. Whips of water lashed out, wrapping around its limbs, followed by a burst of holy light. Then a crackle of thunder. A perfect chain combo. First came the immobilization and confusion spells, designed to buy time and keep the beast from charging. Then came the onslaught. Wind blades. Fireballs. Spires of ice. Ah. It's not over yet. Kana continued activating her preset traps, layering in more flying cards whenever the chance came. Magic bursts of all elements rained down one after another, engulfing the massive figure of the beast in a brilliant storm of light and sound. For a while, the only thing filling the canyon was the roar of magic and Kana's sharp commands, so much so that the monster's pained bellows were nearly drowned out. Meanwhile, the lone grump kept faithfully spitting venom without pause. By the time Kana's card supply was almost depleted, the violent tremors caused by the beast had subsided. The mountain where the unicorn had originally taken shelter had begun to crumble, riddled with cracks from the magic onslaught. Stones and rubble tumbled down in torrents. Panting, Kana looked out over the dust and smoke, toward the heap of boulders now covering the creature. How's that? Even a true S-class monster should have been done in by that. Rhodes, ever the cautious one, yanked her back behind cover. Rule number 1, never leave your flag out in the open. Rule number 2, never walk up to something that might still bite. H. With a thunderous roar, the mountain of debris exploded outward, and the earth quaked harder than before. Chunks of rock slammed into their hiding boulder, and smashed the poor grump aside before it could even croak a warning. The toxic amphibian let out a final squeal before it was swatted away like a fly by a furious claw swipe. The unicorn monster staggered into view, its once majestic figure now tattered and barely holding together. A chunk of its horn was snapped off. Several jagged teeth were missing. One eye was swollen shut. Its body was covered in gashes, crushed scales, burns, frostbite, and patches of poison-eaten hide. The signs of carnage were everywhere. What had entered the battlefield on 2 feet like a proud beast was now hunched over on all fours, letting out a furious, wounded bellow into the sky. Rarg! It slammed its tail into the ground, unleashing another localized quake. A nearby cliffside collapsed from the impact. Crab time, now! Rhodes shouted, grabbing Kana and hauling her onto the back of the scuttle crab. Run, run, run. Go. The crustacean mount didn't need to be told twice. It bolted into action. The unicorn, bloodied but unbowed, let out a snarling hiss and gave chase, dragging its broken body through the canyon like a tank on its last legs. Actually, Kana said breathlessly as she watched the monster barrel after them, her expression dazed. I really did give it everything I had. In most real battles, it was nearly impossible to find a chance to set up such a perfect field for herself. This had been the ideal scenario. She'd used every card, every trap, and every trick she had. And yet, was even that not enough? Chapter 173, Give up, don't panic. This might be its final outburst, or just its last gasp. Rhodes said, trying to sound hopeful. Let's hold out a little longer. Maybe it'll burn out before we do. The scuttle crab darted wildly across the canyon floor, carrying Rhodes and Kana on its back. But the tremors underfoot and boulders rolling from the crumbling cliffs made escape treacherous. Kana gritted her teeth and used the last of her magic power to hurl a few enchanted cards. They detonated in flashes of light, striking the beast in its mouth, nostrils, and open wounds. The monster howled in pain. It looked battered, venom staining its face, a broken horn, cracked scales, missing teeth, and one eye swollen shut, but it only seemed to grow more furious. Its tail smashed the ground repeatedly, sending shockwaves through the earth. 2 mountains ahead trembled and collapsed, spilling a cascade of stone from every direction. If it weren't for the scuttle crab's full-range vision, dodging the chaos would have been impossible. Even so, the rumbling ground messed with its balance. A boulder the size of a barrel struck one of its legs. Take over. Raptor form. Rhodes' legs transformed into powerful bird talons. He grabbed Kana by the shoulders and soared upward with a flap of his wings. The unicorn monster roared and hurled a massive rock after them. As it vanished from the field, the scuttle crab sent one last snapshot of the terrain, allowing Rhodes to dodge 2 incoming strikes from behind. Wings beating fast, Rhodes carried Kana through the air while the monster chased them below, still managing to fling stones their way despite its wounds. No. Kana murmured, her expression clouded with despair. She felt the bitter sting of failure looming once again. Rhodes hesitated. There are two options left. Kana looked up, desperate. Tell me. What can we do? First option, we find a place to hide and stall for time. If we can hold out until dusk, I might have just enough magic left to summon the Bramble back. With its strength, even this unicorn might. No. Kana immediately shook her head. You're already at your limit. Pushing yourself any further could cause lasting damage to your magic circuits. It wasn't a life or death battle. It was her S-class exam. And while it mattered greatly to her, it wasn't worth risking Rhodes' future. Rhodes nodded slowly. He'd expected her answer. The second option is, I try to take over it. Kana's eyes widened, and she objected even more fiercely. No. Rhodes, that's way too dangerous. An enraged beast is hard enough to contain under normal circumstances. You're a genius with takeover magic, sure, but not like this. Not while you're exhausted. If you lose control. The thought of him ending up like Elfman, that out-of-control transformation from years ago, sent a chill down her spine. Elfman had been lucky to recover. But Rhodes might not be. Kana's voice trembled. I won't let you risk that. I'd rather fail this exam. Rhodes didn't answer immediately. Even without her saying it outright, he could tell just how much this exam meant to her. As long as there was still a chance, Rhodes didn't want to give up. It wasn't the safest idea, but, with Master Makarov and Rosa watching their backs, the situation couldn't spiral too far out of control. Whoosh! Bang! A crimson flare soared into the sky, bursting into a radiant bloom of red light. Kana? That's enough, Rhodes. Kana lowered her head, her voice soft and trembling. You've done more than enough. It's me. I'm just not strong enough. I don't deserve it. Tears slid silently down Kana's cheeks and fell onto the battered head of the unicorn monster below. The creature blinked up at her, just in time to see a figure clad in dark armor descend from above. Requip, black wing armor. Firing a flare during the exam meant forfeiting the test. The mission would now fall to Ursa. Rhodes carried Kana to an open area nearby and gently set her down. She dropped to her knees, one hand supporting her weight, the other pounding the earth in frustration. Tears streamed down her face. She tried to stifle her sobs, but within moments, she broke down and cried openly. Rhodes stood silently beside her, unsure of what to say. Behind them, Ursa landed gracefully after a flurry of sword swings, and the rampaging unicorn finally collapsed to the ground with a guttural roar of defeat. 3 days later. The frenzy over the S-class wizard promotion exam had died down. Warren, who had sulked for an entire day after failing to pass, had perked up and was now joking around with Max again. Mickey hadn't taken the outcome well either. She'd been challenging guildmates to sparring matches for 2 days straight, clearly using combat to blow off steam. Master Makarov himself wasn't in the best mood either. He had just returned from a disciplinary meeting at the council's local branch. Apparently, the S-class exam had caused extensive environmental damage, and to make matters worse, the battle with the unicorn monster had sent shockwaves as far as the Clover Bridge, terrifying passing passengers on a nearby train. Naturally, the clever old man blamed it all on the unicorn. The Magic Council, understanding the threat level and destructive power of such a creature, ultimately let the matter go. They acknowledged the necessity of neutralizing the monster. But they didn't hand out any commendations either. Master Makarov finally felt a bit of relief. He'd managed to avoid having to submit a formal written apology to the Magic Council, and for that alone, he considered it a win. But the ones who were left feeling the heaviest were Kana and Rhodes. Kana had been drowning herself in booze ever since the exam ended. No one was sure if she'd even been sober for an hour over the past 3 days. As for Rhodes, he'd barely left his house. Whenever he did come to the guild, he completed his assignments, trained hard, and disappeared into some quiet corner to rest. He avoided talking to others if he could help it. Today, as he tried to sneak off again, someone gently tugged at the back of his shirt. Turning around, he saw Myra's concerned face. Rhodes avoided meeting her gaze and forced a half-smile. What's up? Oh, do you need help registering a mission? I was just gonna. Myra didn't acknowledge his excuse. Instead, she softly asked. Will you sit with me for a bit? Rhodes paused for a moment, then gave a small nod. Myra smiled gently, took his wrist, and guided him to a seat at the front counter. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she poured 2 drinks, setting one in front of each of them. Then, she slid her stool a bit closer to him, smoothed out her skirt, and sat down. Their elbows bumped on the table. Both of them shifted slightly, pulling back a few centimeters like awkward school kids sharing a desk, maintaining a delicate no-touch border between them. Myra. Rhodes started hesitantly, unsure of what to say. Myra smiled and interrupted kindly. Try the drink first. It's a new recipe Mr. Cook's been working on. All right. Rhodes took a sip. The first taste was tart, but it quickly gave way to a wave of sweetness that filled his mouth. What do you think? Tastes a bit like sea buckthorn juice, but it's really sweet. That's because they added sugar and some other flavorings. Just a bit of the sea buckthorn sourness was left behind. Myra took a sip herself, closing her eyes as if savoring it. Sea buckthorn still in season, so I stocked up. I had Mr. Cook try turning them into drinks. Rhodes hummed in approval. It's nice. Speaking of which, on the way to the market the other day. Myra didn't wait for his response. She simply kept talking, cheerfully recounting things that had happened at the guild while Rhodes was away, or what she ran into while out and about. Rhodes sat there, listening. Every story was mundane: who bickered with who picked a fight, which shop raised its prices, which vendor she managed to haggle down. Myra clearly knew why Rhodes was in a slump, but she never once brought up the exam. Instead, she just filled the space with her warm presence and light chatter. Little, ordinary things that made the world feel less heavy. She laughed as she spoke, sometimes throwing in a wink or a smirk, and gradually, Rhodes felt his heart settle. He slowly drank from his cup, the sweet and sour flavor somehow more comforting now than before. Through Myra's stories, he looked at the guild with fresh eyes. Like seeing its heartbeat through her words. Eventually, his cup was empty. Without a word, Myra pushed hers toward him. Rhodes blinked, surprised. Myra turned her head away, pretending not to notice. It's way too sweet. If I drink the whole thing, I'll just get fat. Chapter 174, New Year is coming. After listening to Myra chat about countless little things, Rhodes began teasing her with playful expressions, occasionally chiming into banter, and even laughing as they speculated on how tough it must be to design Roz's armor sets. His mood had clearly lifted. To have someone like this by your side, someone who can put your heart at ease when you're weighed down by emotions, is a rare and precious blessing. Thanks. Myra leaned sideways against the counter, resting her cheek in one hand as she gazed at him with a playful glint in her eyes. Thank you for what? She asked, feigning innocence. Did she know how pretty she looked like that? Rhodes gave her a sidelong smile as he swirled the drink in his hand. Thanks for buying me juice. Hee. Myra grinned, but continued pressing him. Is that really all? Rhodes hesitated for a beat before asking. Did the master and Rosa tell you about the S-class exam? Just a bit. The master said you performed really well. Myra replied. Then she tilted her head. Are you still wondering if you didn't do enough to help Canna pass? Rhodes thought for a moment. Well, not exactly. Myra offered gently. Then maybe it's something else. Like, even though you were prepared, actually realizing that you couldn't beat Lixus with your own strength, even after giving it your all, it stung a little, didn't it? Maybe a little. Rhodes admitted. But it's not the end of the world. I've got a clear idea of what I want to work on and where I need to improve, so I'm not going to let it get me too down. Considering he had only been practicing magic for 6 months, being able to go toe-to-toe with S-class mages was already a huge accomplishment. He was proud of that. He wasn't strong enough yet, but he was getting there. In that case. Myra's eyes shifted toward the bar, where Canna sat with a barrel of booze. What's really bothering you is Canna, isn't it? You're afraid she might not bounce back from this. Rhodes turned to look at her. You reading my mind now? Myra smiled. I don't know that kind of magic. But anyone who's paying attention could guess. Just show a little care. It's her mindset that worries me. She continued. If she were like Warren or Mickey, blowing off steam and getting into a few brawls, I wouldn't be so concerned. But instead she's drowning herself in alcohol. That's not healthy. And I've tried talking to her, but... Myra sighed. Rhodes remembered the expression Canna wore on the day of the exam. Haunted. Hollow. He knew she wasn't blaming him. If anything, she was looking inward, trying to shoulder all the blame. And when the guilt became too much, when the pressure reached its limit, she numbed herself the only way she knew how. He had seen it before. People breaking down after failing something important. Back in his original world, some had even taken their lives over failed college entrance exams.